Welcome to your weekly interval. This is the Best Damn Nerd Show. I am your host, Microphone Alchemist Bimbo Jimbo. With me tonight, Chief Science Officer of Star Labs, Mark Truex.
Roll out, Autobots.
And Hall of Fame cyber athlete, Jonathan Craig.
Hey, what's up, guys? Happy to be here.
No, we want a Transformers quote off the top. Give us perhaps something memorable from one of those Michael Bay films that you're going to be defending later on in the program.
There's so many memorable lines that it's hard for me to just pick one, you know?
Or your money back.
Yeah, well, that's from the good one, but that's not what John likes. Welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show, everyone. And yes, we are going to be talking Transformers at great length. We watched Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy Siege. It is chapter 1 that just hit Netflix, and we're very excited to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some of the nostalgia that comes with talking the robots that are more than meets the eye, the robots in disguise that won our hearts all the way back in the 80s and have lasted all the way here into now. But before we get into that, what have you guys been up to? John, what's been going on?
I've just been smoking and joking, you know, just hanging out, gaming a little bit. Yeah, I don't really have any big updates.
Smoking meats?
I'm gonna circle back to you in a moment because I know you've been watching a lot of movies. But Mark, you watched a particular movie that you wanted to bring up.
Actually, yeah, I really would. I watch on Amazon Prime right now is the movie Vivarium with Imogen Poots and Jesse Eisenberg. And man, if you are Sans child, you should watch this movie to get a feel of what parenthood is like.
Wow, okay.
It is a very interesting character study into modern parenting.
So specifically before we started recording tonight, Mark was like, John, I got a movie for you.
Yeah.
And it was just very cryptic. And I watched the trailer. It's a very creepy movie. And I was wondering, why did he recommend this to John particularly?
Dude, something about it, and I know it's like on a different topic altogether, but something about it reminded me, well, it reminds me a little bit of like Truman Show, but it also reminds me a little bit of that movie Matt Damon was in where he like gets shrunk. Do you remember that one?
No, I don't remember.
He gets miniaturized.
Yeah.
So that like his money goes farther and like he can live this lavish lifestyle. Something
vaguely,
like weird. Yeah. Something weird about it where it's like not quite sci-fi. There's something like unnerving about the whole thing. It's really interesting.
That's definitely this movie. So it starts off with these two characters that are a couple, and they're basically like off house hunting, and they go and see this new like suburban housing tract, and they're shown this one property, this Unit 9, and then when they're done and ready to like leave the property to go away, they're basically stuck in like this suburban labyrinth, and they're stuck in like this housing tract, this same house one after the next, and really weird things start going on, including the presence of a child. And I don't want to like go too deep beyond that, but like seriously, like considering having kids, or if you are a new parent as well, watch this.
It'll scare you off.
It is a trip. It's a good watch for sure. We've been quoting it around the house here the last few days.
I'm only 19 months into parenthood, so I think it's too close to home probably. For me.
It's still too fresh for John.
Yeah.
My main takeaway from the trailer, and this is a little bit of an aside, but when in the trailer it shows them trying to exit in a very Twilight Zone fashion, they just keep going around and around in a circle, not being able to find the exit. So in my previous podcast that was dealt with wrestling in the Click, we once picked up pro wrestling legend Chris Jericho from the airport, my co-host Baby Huey and I, and I was sitting in the back seat, and so we're trying to leave San Francisco International Airport, and my beloved co-host missed the exit like at least 3 times. So we did the lap, and I'm sure Chris Jericho probably just thought, what have I gotten myself into with these 2 marks?
As you're telling the story, I'm thinking like, why did he agree to get picked up by some random podcast in the age of Uber?
Right. That's a long story in and of itself, but it just was in watching that trailer, I was like, oh, this is Chris Jericho at the airport all over again. The poor guy.
It's also how I imagine like people come to live in places like Fresno, California. Like,
they just can't find the exit.
Yeah. Maybe their car broke down. They got a flat tire, and then they just never found their way out. You know, they just
Fresno's a good spot. Fresno's a good spot.
I know. I have family there. No disrespect, but you know,
Heroes Comics, great comic shop. Go there, check it out. Hopefully they're open. Throw a shout out their way.
Can even reference the comic shop in Fresno. But John, keeping it on the movie track, you were watching a lot of DCEU in preparation for a show that we already did.
I started preparing for it. The week after we recorded it, which is
perfect. Great. You love to see that happen.
But yeah, so I Man of Steel unfortunately is not available on HBO Max, which sucks and it's really annoying. But at least at the time of recording this, I watched Batman vs Superman, and then I started watching. I'm about halfway through Justice League. I watched it in spurts between stuff at work, and dude, I love them. They're great movies. Yeah, I don't know why you're such a hater.
Fantastic. Do exactly what a movie should do. Entertain you.
Well, here's what I'll say. In retrospect, well, hold on. Before you say anything, James, in retrospect, like thinking about that episode and the recording process, I expected you guys to be a lot harder on DC movies than you were. And I think by the end of the episode, it's apparent that like everyone on this show generally liked all the DC movies that have come out in the last 10 years.
I think
how could you not?
I think with the DC movies, again, I think I even said to you in Discord, which by the way, bestdamnnerdshow.com/Discord, if you want to join the conversation, is that I think there's a certain amount of a grade on a curve aspect. It's that, look, DC has given us great movies, whether it's the Nolan Batman films, the even more superior Tim Burton Batman films that preceded them. And, they're in Justice League itself, we're going to talk Zack Snyder again this week. I enjoyed Justice League, and I tried to make that abundantly apparent in the episode when we were talking about DCEU, and point out the things from those movies, even though flawed, the things that I really liked. Look, the Marvel movies are flawed, and I still like a great deal of them. What people choose to focus on is that when I offer things that were maybe not as good as they should have been, they narrow in on that and say, oh, you just hate everything. It's like, no, when I say that something is too comedic, it doesn't mean that I'm saying that the whole thing is bad or that every Marvel movie is bad. Some of them are. And the most recent one that comes out doesn't automatically make it the best, or just because you're giving us a Superman movie doesn't mean it's good. Some of them are. Some of them are.
On that note, though, like the tone of the MCU is more lighthearted, is more aimed at children. I mean, the cut I watched of Batman vs Superman was rated R, so it's definitely not intended for children. And I think it's a breath of fresh air. I like the Marvel. I like the Marvel movies I've seen. I've seen maybe 2/3 of them, and they're always a fun ride. They are definitely a lot more lighthearted. Always? There's not a lot at stake, even in the ones where they're trying to set it up like the world is about to end. Whereas, in the DC movies, like everything feels so grave, like all these things that are happening. And I kind of dig that. It's a breath of fresh air. I don't want every Batman movie and every Superman movie to feel like ones that have already come out. In fact, I don't think that they should be anything like the ones that have already come out. I think that they should do new stuff every time they redo it.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, all of us were children once, so it's great when Disney puts out a great popcorn flick like what they've done with the Marvel movies. But sometimes you want to grow up and go see a man movie. It's time to grow up a little bit and see the world for what it is. And it's nice to watch those stories too.
Yeah, no, and DC does do a lot of things well, and they don't punctuate scenes with needless jokes oftentimes like Marvel does. And a lot of the early MCU, while still having some lighthearted moments, isn't overly saturated by them. And things that are intended for children can still be serious and take you through the gamut of emotions. And I will reference Avatar: The Last Airbender again as shows that let you do that. And I'll reference a comedy that is geared towards adults that lets you do that. And that's Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2. In Deadpool 2, spoilers for those who haven't seen it, apologies, but you haven't seen it, Mark?
No.
Oh, well.
You guys already ruined it last time.
Sorry, buddy. Well, they kill his girlfriend / fiance in the very beginning, and it's emotional. And this is a superhero comedy film. It's a comedic character that is Deadpool in many ways. And they let you feel all of that. And I didn't mean to get bogged down in an MCU thing. That's a whole conversation for another time.
You can't help
It's
yourself.
Valid, it's
you
valid.
can't help yourself. You just always go down it.
I think what I've been enjoying about my watch throughs now, and again, this episode is not our DCEU episode. That was last week.
No, but I do want to put a bow on the topic because there are a few things I want to address.
But I've been enjoying the watches, and look, I'm a huge fan of the Nolan movies, and even the third one. Like I forgive that one a lot more than other people do. I feel like they picked up the baton and they really carried it and moved it forward with these movies that have followed. I don't think they are rewriting history. I think that everything still kind of fits into the world in some way, even though, technically DCEU starts with Man of Steel or wherever you want to draw that line in the sand. And yeah, I think they're very refreshing. Like when you look back at the catalog of Batman movies, I'm glad that we have the Schumacher movies, as I'm glad that we have the Tim Burton movies, and I'm glad that we have the Nolan movies, and I'm glad that we have these Snyder ones. Like, you get so many different takes on it, and it's fun that way. And then if you go even further back in history, you have the like really, kind of over the top, silly, bright
Adam West.
Yeah. I think it's cool. Like, I'm of the mindset, and this is, James, where you and I disagree a lot, I think, is I'm of the mindset where it's okay to do new things with the same framework of a story. And where I think, at least what I heard in last week's episode a lot, was like, you guys don't want to see a reinvented Superman and reinvented Batman. Like, you want to hit those notes that are expected of the characters and of their personalities. But
from a certain perspective, yes, when it is going to be so incredibly mainstream, and with the incredible hope that it is going to be there to stay for a while. And so honestly, when I'm coming at it, it's from a lens of optimism that, hey, this is going to be our Superman for a protracted period of time. So let's play the hits here with him. Now, and again, I like casting of Henry Cavill, and I like aspects. I liked him in Justice League. And so I do want to put a bow on the DCEU stuff, and we're going to be talking a pretty fair amount of DC today because we've got some news on that front. But something that we didn't have time to get to in last episode. And last episode was a beast, and I think a very good episode. And we could have gone even
top
more
10
thorough.
All time.
Absolutely, certainly of the reboot, maybe. But we could have gone through each movie in greater detail. But we have lives and stuff like that, even during a pandemic. But
and we got time to fill too for later on. Something
that I had intended to hit on was something that DC has done very well and doesn't get enough credit for, and maybe CW deserves more credit than DC, but it's mutual, and that is their television universe that they have created. The fact that they created a really, intricate shared television universe, starting with Arrow, the Green Arrow, Stephen Amell, who I think was a phenomenal ambassador for the brand, for DC, for CW, for that wave of shows. Even when, in my opinion, the show went completely off the rails pretty early on in its run, it still was very cool to me that we had a Green Arrow show that a lot of people were gravitating towards, that begot this Flash TV show that was certainly in its first season a lot of fun to watch, and it created this whole other, they call it the Arrowverse or what have you, and that was something that DC and CW and Stephen Amell and everyone involved deserves an awful lot of credit for. And it was something that I had meant to bring up because that's something that they, I think, have done unequivocally better than Marvel. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is absolute trash, just awful. And, now the Netflix debacle with, the characters that they had on Netflix, and are they going to reboot them or are they not kind of deal. CW, DC, pretty buttoned up in regard to their universe. They had crossover events, very comic book feeling. And honestly, a lot of what I feel, especially given the technology that we now have, and given the episodic nature that is comic books, I think in a lot of ways they are better suited for TV than they are for movies.
Dude, we had the same conversation like 11 years ago talking about Watchmen.
Yeah.
And now it's come to life. Like my argument was like, great movie, but should have been a miniseries.
Yes.
And
and now Watchmen's on HBO too.
Yeah, and the same thing is true of I think a lot of comic series. Like I think that they're just better as I think limited run series. Honestly, like give it an end date and let it run its course, and either move on to a new volume or just move away from it entirely.
I think in a perfect world, you do these comic book TV series and their big events could culminate in a feature film, which I think would be pretty awesome. Maybe that's pie in the sky. But Mark, I wanted to give you the floor a little bit on that because I know you hung on to a lot of the Arrowverse shows longer than I did.
Yep, I actually completed Arrow and loved it. There were some seasons that definitely were lackluster. The habitual look, another person with a bow. Not always the best arcs. But overall, how they packaged it up and finished with him, he became the Spectre in the end with Crisis and Infinite Earths. The crossovers, like you mentioned, were really well done. Where at the final crossover this past year, they had 4 different series running, so they had 4 shows back to back across 2 nights to get to tell this huge story. So it's like your made for TV movie in that regard, where you get like this little mini series encapsulating a big item like that.
But so much more. It's so much more content. Like going back to what James was saying, like by doing TV shows, you just get more. And that can be a bad thing, or that can be a really, really
you can dive in more, do more character development for sure. Especially as you mentioned, the comic book format could be extremely episodic in a sense with one shots and mini serials and things like that. And so getting to play with these characters over such a long period of time, especially when they have such a huge villain roster, when you think of things like Batman or Spider-Man, even where their villain and their foes are so great, you want to see them. And then it's almost like, we had one shot to do it in a movie, and it blew it.
And I think fans sort of would be more sort of forgiving of the fact, we're seeing the Joker again, but it's a TV show, so we're going to see more than just the Joker kind of deal. Like we've seen the Joker a lot on film.
Yep. And what I like with DC too is they've really expanded the types of shows they've done and across different networks. I mean, CW is very tweeny and beautiful, and I have a lot of fun with it. But they also did shows like Gotham, and they did shows like Constantine, and they even had, with their new network, they're doing Titans, and they did Swamp Thing and Doom Patrol. I mean,
I'm so sad that can't
Doom
get
Patrol went on
good
film.
Swamp Thing.
Yeah, it's crazy and it's fun that they're getting to explore these different mediums. Just as you were mentioning, that's one thing that they're doing right. I also want to throw out there the DC animated features are far and away superb. There is some stinkers, but when you put out like 3 movies a year,
in recent history,
there might be. But there's some really good ones.
Anything with Harley Quinn or Damian Wayne, crap.
Not necessarily true. Some of like the best Suicide Squads that you will get to see is in animated. A Suicide Squad Hell to Pay is amazing. I cannot recommend that animated feature enough. The more recent Death of Superman was extremely good, and considering they already did that in a animated way a few years prior with Superman Doomsday, which was good, but Death of Superman had so much heart brought into it. Jerry O'Connell killed it, and
I think I had tears in my eyes at one point in that movie. Like no irony there. It was very good, and I think Flashpoint Paradox stands atop pretty much any of the animated superhero films as just being the very, very best. It was so good. Batman and Harley Quinn, not so much.
Yeah, but Gods and Monsters was really good. Hush was really good until their curveball at the end.
No, I'm not going to.
Hush was good until the curveball they decided to change in the animated movie. At the end, it was really good.
Such a pile of whatever.
It was good until the end.
Oh my god!
Even if you don't know the story, you'll probably love it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, but see, I did, and so I did not appreciate it. But yeah, I want to give DC its love in that regard too, because it was such a massive episode. So I wanted to put a bow on that and address some of the things that come up in talks with us and talks with listeners and things. We're going to take a quick break On the other side, we are going to get into our nerd news for the week. And guess what? DC, Zack Snyder, and the gang, they pop up again on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show. And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. Bimbo Jimbo, Mark Trex, Jonathan Craig here with you. And we are going to get into our nerd news for the week. And, we were talking, putting a bow on the DCEU, or so it would appear, because we picked a good time to do that episode, because I'm logging on to Twitter, and all of a sudden I just see this DC fandom trailer announcement hit, and everybody's losing their minds on social media and everything like that. I'm like, oh, okay, so let's see what this is all about. And they released, what I saw first with this was this cool little teaser trailer set to the iconic Superman theme, from the 70s and everything like that. I got hyped for it. And so they are doing a virtual con of their own. They were pretty noticeably absent from Comic-Con at home, and this is why, because they're doing their own thing. DC Fandom, August 22nd. It is going to be a happening, in the words of the late great Gorilla Monsoon. I'm hyped for this, and I want to talk about it and all the things that have sort of come out already as of this recording with you guys. But one small note before we get into all the good and things like that. Online, man, people in fandoms are weird sometimes, dude, because I saw not only fans on Twitter arguing about this and being mild, I think upset is probably the appropriate word. I saw clickbait articles about
they're
this.
Doing it?
No.
Oh.
That the DC Fandom teaser trailer used the Christopher Reeve Superman theme. People were all up in their feelings that they need to just let that go away, and that they should have, I saw multiple people there's a new theme, they should have used that. And it's one of the most iconic pieces of music in film, certainly in superhero films. I thought it was perfectly appropriate. And I saw a major publication that I've been following for years. DC weaponizes old Superman theme to hype DC fandom. It's like, what is going on? Mark, as the resident Superman superfan, what do you think about that?
That's true. When it comes to DC, I don't just get hyped, I stay hyped.
Thanks, Mojo.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about fandom in general, but before getting deeper into it, use the old theme. Use the old theme. Why not? It is iconic, as you said, and part of the beauty of DC Comics and the multiverse and all the stuff, we hashed this on the last episode, but you can have all of it. You can have it all. It's great. You really can have it all. And the theme is fantastic. I have it on at least 3 different Christmas ornaments here in the True X house. So wow. I don't get enough of it. Weaponizing it sounds a little clickbaity and charged for sure, but I mean, it's the internet.
I think I sent it to John. I was like, now this is clickbait. I
wouldn't put it past
it
John.
Worked. I clicked on it because I was so appalled at the yellow journalism.
Yeah.
It's an obscene
it's
way
hard
of
to say
it.
what that even means, because certainly there's going to be some information about Superman in the fandom, given that he's a marquee character. So, what are they supposed to do? I mean,
Also, why can't that be sort of like DC's anthem? For these properties that they're going to adapt, because it's not like they're going to build upon those movies, and that music is so powerful. Use it.
It's either that or it's Batman the Animated Series. Any other sound clip, I probably wouldn't catch it.
I think Danny Elfman from the 1989 Batman, that theme, but I still think the Superman one gets you more hyped, because it is just that powerful sort of crescendo within it, and it's Superman. I think the only thing that, the old Spider-Man animated theme from way back in the, Spider-Man, maybe, but it's not Superman. It just isn't. So I didn't see the anger, the ire, but this event though has me super excited, and just the way they announced it, how they've rolled it out, the Expendables-esque trailer list of names and people that are going to be a part of this. I think they've already put sort of Comic-Con at home to shame with how they've gone about marketing this thing. What say you, John?
Yeah, I agree, and I do know some of the people behind the scenes at Warner Brothers who work on stuff like this, and they are very good at what they do. So I imagine that it's going to be a good show. Definitely far better than, kind of what Comic-Con at home had to show.
Mark, what's your feeling? I know you stay hyped, but I mean, this must have taken you up to 11.
Dude, I can't wait. Well, I know we've been talking about it quite a while here, at least amongst us as friends, that DC at Home was a thing. And originally I thought it was even going to be kicking off Comic-Con as some sort of thing. And, in the past, Disney has had their own D23, and a lot of companies have kind of done this. And given the wake left behind with Comic-Con cancellation this year, and DC always having just a prime spot and really rolling out the red carpets at Comic-Con every year, it makes sense. And I am so hyped that they're delivering on it. I mean, not only are they really digging into a bunch of the TV series from the universes on their own app, but they're also going into the Arrowverse. They're going into the movies, and of course, they're going into comics. And then just getting like a bunch of just great other people doing like announcing and other personalities into the fold to make it bigger beyond the usual DC reach. So it feels like a con.
And
just
honestly,
circumstances, but
honestly, hopefully it opens the door for something like this more regularly too. There's enough material in the DC world that they could have their own traveling conventions all around the country.
I think D23 made Comic-Con not nervous, because Comic-Con is still such a powerful entity, but D23 I think definitely shook up the status quo a little bit when they decided to hold back certain announcements that usually would appear at Comic-Con for D23. Dude. And D23 was every other year. You could easily do now with the state of things in studios with they could do it every year. DC could do it every year.
Definitely.
With stuff like this, now if I'm Comic-Con, maybe, people will still go, because it just might change the experience. But it might change the experience a little bit, and maybe for the better, too.
Yeah, probably. I mean, even in title, Comic-Con is supposed to be about comics and the comic world, but like the DC offering is, as we covered earlier, like it's multimedia. We didn't even touch on the video games. They have some of the best video games of all time in their lineup.
The Arkham series is incredible.
Yeah,
and they have a new Suicide Squad that they're going to be talking about.
I love the Injustice series, and even prior to that, DC versus Mortal Kombat, we had a lot of fun with, James.
Oh, we did. I dominated.
Dude,
Hall of Famer.
Amazing games. And honestly, it reminds me of like EA Play, what EA Play has done with E3. Like E3 is this massive annual video game convention where you expect a lot of big announcements to be made, and EA, giant video game publisher, is like, you know what, we don't have enough center stage here, and we're competing for attention with Activision, with Xbox and PlayStation, who are making big announcements here. Let's just do our own convention in the same city a week prior, because all these people are just going to fly out a couple days early to come to our thing, and we have enough titles to support it, and I think that's what they're smart to do it. DC needs to do this, and again, I hope it becomes an annual thing, because they have enough to support it for sure.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And just again, the marketing of DC fandom compared to Comic-Con at home, to me, is night and day. This feels like a big fucking deal. Like, just right out of the gate, everything that came out, they're showing, new snippets from Wonder Woman 1984. Again, the list of confirmed names that are going to be there. Ryan Reynolds got on, in on the act and sort of made a mock Green Lantern cut.
The Reynolds cut.
Yeah, the Reynolds cut that's like 30 seconds long. it's like all the good footage from the movie.
A bummer about how Comic-Con did it was it felt like, we can't have our con, so I guess we'll just throw together what we can to do online stuff. And on the other hand, this DC fandom thing feels deliberate. It feels planned. It's like, we don't have to do this. We're going to do it because we have so many good ideas that we can put into it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, also trending out of this was Zack Snyder's Justice League. And so this title has been gaining traction on social media in terms of what they should call this thing. Zack Snyder is going to be part of DC fandom, but fans are pushing for it to be called Zack Snyder's Justice League.
They should just
as
call it
opposed to the
canceled,
Snyder
not do
Cut.
it, dude. Honestly.
No,
I mean, it's
it needs to
coming.
happen.
It's already.
Why?
Here's the thing.
Why
it
not?
doesn't need, it doesn't
Why not?
need to happen.
I have
I'm
a
fine
reason
with.
why not.
I'm fine
Richard
with
Donner
it
got a
happening.
cut. Give Zack Snyder a cut.
Oh my god.
That's a fair point. Again, it's happening, so it is what it is.
But what's the
I
purpose
enjoyed
of it?
the
Like
theatrical cut.
to reinvent history? I mean, dude, the theatrical cut was a full collaboration from creatives and studio alike, and that's what was presented to the world as the story. That is Justice League. Now to go back and be like, let's just let the creatives like run amok and do whatever the hell they want.
You don't need to be
defensive.
defensive.
I think it's the idea that personal tragedy sort of sideswiped Zack Snyder, and he was not able to give his full, finished vision of what essentially was his movie was going to be. Now, I happen to think that in an awful situation, they came out with a really good movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. But the fans are sort of clamoring for this, and I think it's cool in a certain aspect that DC is listening to it. You could say that it's setting a bad precedent that now whenever they complain or whatever but
like Star Wars.
Yeah, well, so where I am on that side of the fence. That I certainly wish the mouse would listen to my many petitions. But they don't.
You got your special editions. What more do you want?
Oh, Johnny.
So
Johnny.
that's what this is. That's exactly what this is.
I don't want the special editions, John.
But that's what you're gonna get with Zack Snyder's cut.
Well, the thing with the Snyder cut is it doesn't dissolve what happened in Justice League theatrical. It adds. It's a different version of it. Again, if we're talking about different universes and what ifs and Elseworlds and things like that.
That's annoying to me.
The whole thing with this in this partnership with HBO Max is this could actually evolve into a Snyderverse that goes on HBO Max, and they can do things that are just contained off of what's happening in here. Then you have your movies, then you have the DC universe, and you have the TV shows and the comic books and the video games, and it's all great. It's all great.
I hate it because it undermines the whole like filmmaking production process. Like I know, but the thing
for those
is,
of you just listening, Mark made an elitist nose gesture at John.
Dude, I feel for you. Like I've been on the Zack Snyder side, definitely not working on things at the size and scale of Justice League, but I've gotten notes from networks on projects I've worked on. It sucks, but that's the process. Like it is collaborative, and sometimes in the long run, you can look back and be like, I had an emotional reaction. I wasn't happy with those notes, but they were right. Or I'm glad that they made me work within the confines of this box because it made me get more creative. If then you go back later on and you're like, let's add back in all the shit that we were asked to take out or that we took out for whatever reason, then you're undermining the entire creative process. And I think that it I don't know, you're just discounting a lot of other people's point of view on what the best thing to do is.
The train is coming, and I hope it's good. That is where we will leave the Zack Snyder discussion. Again, he's been dominating the nerd world, this podcast. At this point, I just want it to be out already so we can move on from all the sort of the hand wringing about it, and let's see how it is. I hope it's good. I really do. But let's keep it with Snyder and DC, not Zack Snyder, but Scott Snyder, who is one of my favorite comic book writers of all time. Mark, what is the update with one Scott Snyder?
So big thing, Scott Snyder finally made this kind of announcement that after a really solid 10-year stretch with DC Comics, he is wanting to take a step back from their core titles. He doesn't want to be continuing to work on basically the heart and the thread of what's happening in the DCU anymore. And it's understandable after putting 10 years into it, and of course having a very successful independent run as well with a lot of his own creator-owned titles. He wants to give other people a chance to play with these classic characters and get to make an impact into the medium. So he's kind of made this announcement that like after Metal, essentially, he wants to take a step back.
Evil baby Batman.
After Evil Baby Batman, he's going to take a little step back and let some other people come in. And I think DC is primed with a lot of great writers on their roster right now that it's not a problem. I honestly feel like Snyder had kind of taken a step back from the heartthread of it recently. I know he did I think a 2-year run on Justice League that just finished up not too long ago. And of course the metal events are really huge, but I really feel like Tom King has really stepped it up and has started becoming that key guy. Jeff Johns is still there pumping out great stuff. I wish he'd stick to his deadlines, but Jeff Johns is doing a lot at DC, including a lot of stuff in the movie side of things. So, the fact that Snyder's stepping away, I mean, it makes sense, and I'm excited to see what creator-owned things he continues to come out with. I hope we continue to get more American Vampire. I would love to see some more Witches. The Halloween special issue that came out, I think it was last year or the year before, was superb, but I need more. And if he ever wants to get around to doing Severed again, I ask him every time I see him at the con. He should.
Do you really?
I do. It's like, so when do we get another Severed, Scott? He's like, yeah, that's not happening.
That's what he says?
Yeah, because he had done it with like an old friend of his, and that friend is no longer in the mix. Like it's not a
falling out
thing that they're doing. No, not necessarily falling out. Just life taking courses, and he wouldn't do that project without him. There,
got it.
Input.
Got it.
Yeah,
yeah. That
and
makes...
so he's like, yeah, it's just not something I'm touching, and I'm like, but you should. I want it. I want to see it.
Well, you know, as we move on from Scott Snyder, he really is one of the nice guys in the industry too, and he's very accomplished. He's done a lot of great work in the comic book industry, and I have no doubt that will continue no matter what project he's on. He's incredibly creative. He's a very, very good writer, and he does horror so well. I'm very excited to see what he does next. All right, we're gonna switch. He
did a Swamp Thing. Sorry to cut you off, James, but I know John was looking for some good Swamp Things.
No,
he did a run on Swamp Thing.
The last time we'll ever talk DC on this podcast now.
Just read Scott Snyder's Swamp Thing run. Done.
That's all you need.
It's 3 trades. 3 trades, you're good.
All right, we're going to switch gears now to the Marvel side of things. Marvel's Avengers. It's a new third-person action-adventure game. The beta is, been made available. People are playing it. People are reacting to it. John, you're shaking your head. Why?
I just don't understand why games like this put out betas. Like, there's really no reason for it. It's not like a competitive game. It's not like a massively multiplayer game where they need to, like, stress test systems. It's just like your run-of-the-mill, like, action adventure game.
It feels like an update to some of the games that we talked about in the X-Men episode. It feels like this generation, the new generation's Marvel Ultimate Alliance type game. From what I've seen, the gameplay looks amazing. The uniqueness of how each character plays seems really cool. Like, Thor plays very much so like Kratos from God of War, whereas Captain America, you definitely get that sort of Arkham Asylum Batman type play style from him, and that's cool to me. And Iron Man gives you a whole different play style, same with Black Widow.
Yeah, some of the
others.
game mechanics
I'm excited
cool
for this.
Too. The leveling mechanics, and I think it's really like an evolution of the Spider-Man game, which was very well received and people had a lot of fun with. I think it'll be fine. It's just not my kind of game,
Why?
There's no headshots. Like, what am I supposed to do? I need crosshairs. I need guns. I need headshots.
There is some multiplayer elements though to it. Where you can sort of group up and everything like that and do some cool stuff in game. I'm very excited for this. I think it's.
I'm not saying it's not going to be a fun, like, enjoyable game, dude. I just don't see why there's a beta for it and why that's why that's there. I think it's just a marketing thing, really. Like, they're just
is it smart marketing though?
Yeah, I think the game would do good no matter what, though. Like, it's a genre of game that people are always hungry for more of. It's going to be done at a high quality, and it's Marvel, so you get to play all your favorite heroes.
I mean, sheep got to follow, so
my God.
It's going to do fine.
Mark, you give a guy an inch, he takes a mile. One thing that's sort of causing a stir is the fact that Spider-Man is exclusive to the PlayStation version. People are all in a tizzy about that, which I think is kind of hilarious. I don't need Spider-Man, even if I were to get it for the Xbox or whatever. I don't need Spider-Man in my Avengers because there's plenty of other Avengers that are more important to the mythos than Spider-Man in the context of being in the group. And that guy, Captain America.
Also, like, who cares if you don't have Spider-Man? If you wanted to play Spider-Man, get a PlayStation, get the Spider-Man game. That game was awesome.
Yeah, I have one quibble with the end of that game. I worked very hard to unlock certain suits in that game and get all the ones I really liked, like the old school animated version or the cel-shaded comic book version. And then the last boss fight, they make you wear this butt-ass ugly other suit. It is just awful. Just atrocious. They make you do it. Terrible.
You sound like Tim in WoW.
I think there's a fun history of like having an exclusive character on a different system like that. I think it's interesting that they pulled it from within lore, if you would. Like, it's a Marvel game. You should have all the Marvel characters. But back when Soul Calibur 4 came out and you had Darth Vader exclusive to PlayStation and Yoda exclusive to 360, that was awesome to have that. And just that extra little like nod and throw out for fans to get to play something unique for their system. I thought that was a really cool ploy back then. It is kind of weird that it's within universe, though.
Well, but there is that already the exclusivity of Spider-Man with the deal between Marvel and Sony anyway. Like, there's an existing partnership there, so they have to sort of, they have to adhere to that. So,
which is why I think it's fine. Like, if you want to play Spider-Man, why are you buying this game to play Spider-Man? Like, buy the Spider-Man game that just came out that was amazing.
Well, or maybe this is what sort of will tip somebody if they're on the fence about which system in the new generation to get. Like, hey, I'll just get this one.
Is there going to be a character exclusive to Xbox then?
Not that I've seen.
But in fact, I'm actually buying the Xbox version because I hate Spider-Man, so I'm pleased that he's not in it.
Wow, I don't believe that for an instant, John.
No,
throw in like a Scarlet Spider or something.
Yeah, I don't think they could do that. But I want to move on to something that's in John's wheelhouse here, our final item on the nerd news, and that is Dr. Disrespect has made his return to streaming on YouTube. John, fill us in on Dr. Disrespect and everything that has gone down there, and why are you hyped for this?
It's just a big game changer in the world of like streaming, like gaming streamers. In fact, this year has had a lot of tumultuous things happen with Mixer combining with Facebook Gaming, and then in the last year, like Shroud and Ninja both moving to Mixer for big contracts. But this one especially is really big because Dr. Disrespect was one of the last biggest streamers on Twitch. And for those not familiar with Dr. Disrespect, he essentially plays like a character. Like all these other streamers on Twitch are themselves, like they're in their rooms. You can see their unmade beds behind them. Dr. Disrespect is playing a caricature of like an 80s like action television show star. He has like a mullet wig on. If you've never seen a photo of him, you should like Google Dr. Disrespect. It's hilarious. He wears like reflective sunglasses. He has like a mullet wig. He wears like a red bulletproof vest. He has these like animated sequences in his stream. His stream is very sophisticated. It's like very low budget, but also like very sophisticated in what he does. He has like transition scenes where he's like sitting in a Lamborghini driving around, or like he'll have one where he'll be like playing a game and he'll have like a motorcycle appear in front of him and he'll be pretending to like pursue people on the motorcycle. He's
like Nick Arcade.
highly entertaining streamer, one of a kind by far. There's no one else doing what he does. He's changed the entire streaming game in his creativity, and he was unequivocally banned from Twitch a little over a month ago,
and we don't know why,
for reasons unknown. Right. So he was streaming one day. Towards the end of his stream, he appeared to get like a mysterious email or text. He kind of went a little dark. Like he got a little quiet, and then, the stream ended, and then that was it. He was banned. He never addressed it publicly in terms of saying why he was banned. In fact, he came out and said that they hadn't told him. Twitch never addressed it. And again, this is one of their biggest streamers. They had a contract with him, an exclusive contract where they owe him a lot of money, and they banned him for reasons unknown. And there's been a lot of speculation because it happened during a period where there were a lot of allegations about other streamers, but we didn't know. And then today, well, actually, starting yesterday...
Well, I want to cut you off real quick before you continue on, because where it popped off in Discord, again, bestdamnnerdshow.com/Discord, is that Tim Childs, lore master Tim Childs, just put in Discord, "Oh man, they got the doc." It was like this huge deal like going on. It like caused this massive stir, and it was a huge deal. And I know you and I were talking about it in terms of some of the speculation that he would be joining like a rival streaming service and stuff like that. Can you? I'd rather steer into that theory as opposed to the other ones.
It's fine.
But continue.
And again, like we don't need to get specific about allegations because they're not true, but like it just the timing made it where people were making bad assumptions about it. But on the other side, it also happened at a time where people are wondering if Shroud and Ninja are going to be starting their own streaming platform now that they're out of their Mixer contracts, because they both got paid a lot of money to move over to Microsoft's Twitch competitor, and then Microsoft gave that to Facebook and closed the operations, so they're free of their contracts. So people are like, "Oh my God, is Doc going to join these two, and they're going to create some super platform that's going to take over Twitch?" Turns out that's not happening. So starting yesterday, Doc, and this is going to date our recording a little bit, but Dr. Disrespect he loaded up his stream on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel with 2 million subscribers. Previously it had just had like stream highlights from his Twitch channel. He fires up the stream and just puts on like a waiting screen. It doesn't even have like a countdown or anything. It's just like his Lamborghini, his like CGI Lamborghini at like a CGI gas station. Do
we have a CGI Lamborghini on our YouTube stream?
We need to create one.
By the way, you can subscribe to us on YouTube if you're listening on another platform or watching on YouTube and have not yet subscribed.
Yeah. So
click.
I'm trying to get through this as quick as I can. I'm sorry for the long-winded story, but he fires up his stream on a waiting screen and gets 300,000 concurrent viewers. So it's 300,000 people watching simultaneously.
It's almost as much as us.
And even like in the middle of the night had tens of thousands of people just sitting there waiting to see what was going to happen. And then today a countdown timer appears and he finally goes live and he addresses these allegations, or he addresses the ban and essentially says like, they still haven't told me why. And he's like, this has been a cockroach strategy from them and I don't understand it, but here we are, like we're back. It feels good to be back. We're on YouTube now. And he's like, I'll let the lawyers sort it out with the contracts. And then he just like went about his streaming. And he
sounds like a professional. That's pretty good.
I mean, he probably, I don't know what happened, but he stands to make a good amount of money from his contract, I imagine.
Yeah. But for being like an 80s cheese character that I know nothing about, it's kind of actually wonderful to hear that he's not some like petty guy in the public sphere. No.
Dude, he's so... I urge everyone to just go watch like a best of Dr. Disrespect compilation if you're not familiar with him at all, because if you want to know anything about Twitch and streaming and you're not like a big Twitch watcher, he will tell you everything you need to know. Just the level of creativity and the level of like fun he brings to streaming games. You'll understand why it's so fun to watch people play video games.
Love it. Love it. All right, we're going to leave the nerd news right there. On the other side, we are going to be talking Transformers, all the nostalgia and everything that comes with that as we lead in to the new Netflix series, Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy Siege. All that and more on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show. And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show, and we are finally going to get into our main topic tonight, and that is Transformers. More than meets the eye, Transformers, robots in disguise, a fandom, a universe that is certainly near and dear to my heart. It was a big part of my childhood growing up, and it endures to this day. Anytime that, and we'll get into the Transformers, the animated movie, but anytime that my schlub ass goes for a run, the Transformers, the animated movie soundtrack is a big part of what we'll get Tubby here to run a little bit harder for at least a few minutes. But, the Transformers are one of the most enduring fandoms around, and their popularity is worldwide. We were talking about, standalone conventions before. We are going to talk about BotCon, which is something that's been going on for a while, and a convention that I've yet to attend, but it's always been on my list to make it down there. Work has always precluded me. but definitely want to end up at a BotCon before I become one with the Matrix in my life. That is definitely on my list. But yeah, it's just Optimus Prime, one of the great fictional characters in the universe. It's certainly in
he
nerd
represents
kind.
everything you love in a main character, in a protagonist.
He is there is something just uniquely I don't even think Americana is the right word, but he is that sort of like paragon virtue that you want in a main character. And I think so many people gravitate towards him for that. And you don't see him sort of suffer a lot of the same slings and arrows about being classified as boring or anything that other characters do. But Mark, what was your sort of introduction to the Transformers, and how much of sort of your backstory is it?
So, the original series cartoon, I always got it in fleeting moments. I never got to see a ton of it. Growing up without cable or access to a lot of those features, but the toys, my God, the toys, just trying not to break them while you transform them. But they were so cool because they were everything you wanted. They were robots and they were trucks. And so that was definitely a big plug there. And then one of my favorite toys of theirs, I got the when the Beast Wars series was first coming out, I got a 2-pack one year for Christmas that was Megatron as the alligator and Optimus Primal as a bat. And I was sorely disappointed when the TV series came out and Optimus Primal was a gorilla, because I had the bat Optimus Primal and it made me really conflicted inside as a child. But Beast Wars, amazing. And that's really one of my definitional pieces of Transformers, was getting to watch those Beast Wars. I would come home from school at 3:00 hour and get to watch that and the entire, evolution of Dinobot's character and the Predacons and the Maximals going at it. I really feel like that revolutionized the fandom of Transformers that had been kind of, lacking for the years prior. And it was really from that getting into it is when I think you and I, James, started watching the animated movie, which was just phenomenal. And I carried that, just to this day. Love that movie. I still quote it weekly in various forms. Yeah. It's very defining of myself, just in cinematic, favorites, as well as like nerd culture staples.
It takes me back. You bringing that stuff up, and I'm honored that that I could introduce you to that movie, and that it became such a big part of our friendship and carries on with you now and stuff like that. And it definitely, I would show that movie to anybody who would watch it for certain. And I actually watched it recently in preparation for this episode, and it holds up to me. And we'll talk about more about that in a moment. But John, were you just like sort of like, what was your sort of exposure level to the Transformers? Because I know in preparation for this episode, you're not the biggest bot guy, you're not the biggest Transformers guy, but you will have your say at a certain point in this segment. I know, but sort of what was your exposure level?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely watched the cartoons, but I think I connected way more with the toys. Like some of my friends down the street had the toys. And it was always as Mark said, like playing with them as much as you can without, trying not to break them, because for some reason there's always like the one arm or the one leg that like swivels in some weird way that if you like over crank it a little too much, like
snaps.
Yeah, it's gone. And it's amazing that like any kids could ever transform them properly because of that. But just playing with basically the toys at other friends' houses was the big thing for me. And then, of course, it's taken on a different tone now, because now I'm watching like Rescue Bots with my son. And then during the break, I was just saying, like, he loves cars and trucks. He's obsessed, and he would just naturally be like a Transformers toy kid. Yeah. So that's definitely, I'm going to figure out when the best time to introduce him to those are.
Going back to the Transformers origins, with the toys and with the show sort of built around it to sell toys, it is a brilliant sort of marketing scheme from that sense, because most little kids, I think they knew by then, loved playing with cars. and cars that could transform into robots. It's a 2-for-1 deal. Who's not going to love that?
Totally different play times, really. But I think that's honestly why Transformers has been so enduring, because even in lulls in the media side of the business, like, you still have these awesome toys that are just universally fun to play with. And so the toys will always be great, and they could always release a new generation of toys and get, young people excited about that. And then the media properties have been really good too.
So a big part of my youth revolved around revolved around G.I. Joe and the Transformers, specifically the toys. And, by the time, look, I was born in 1985. So I caught a lot of G1 via like the USA Cartoon Express or whatever it was called. Like that's a lot of times where I watched G.I. Joe and Transformers, and I ate it up. And again, gravitating towards that very, friendly authority figure in Optimus Prime, the paragon of paragons type hero, the real archetype of what a leader should be, and everything like that.
I felt like he was always so disconnected, though.
I never felt
so,
that
like,
way.
Above the fray.
He, to me, God, this is going to be
never be swayed.
I'm sure I'll. Yeah, he is. His moral compass is always on point. And he really is, like, to me, like, and looking at it, he's this like sort of George Washington nerd figure, in his sort of how his scope and his impact on everything. That's Optimus Prime to me. So I obviously gravitated towards, like, God, this guy is just like, he's such like a powerful figure. Loved my G1 Optimus Prime, and was probably, the easiest one to transform too. Like, for those of you listening or watching, you'll know that his was, the most simple of transformations. Thank God.
Legs just fall down.
Just the legs just fall down, and then you got Optimus that's ready to play and everything like that. And I think that was a smart move by them, because he is your title character. He's your main character. So have him, easy to roll with and everything like that. But in terms of, by the time that I was like coming into my own, the Transformers, like G1 toy line and all that stuff, were already at that point sort of like things that you had to hunt for. I remember toy shops that we would go to and look for old Transformers figures, and a friend of my older brother's that had like a trove of Transformers. And I think that's where I got my first G1 Perceptor or whatever it was. And it was such like it was so cool of him because he gave it to me. And, where I was very aware, I was like, these things aren't cheap at this point, and trying to find them on the secondary toy market and stuff like that. So it was just very cool. And the toys have really helped sort of the property endure and everything like that. But the characters that they gave you were very good. Optimus Prime and Megatron, their battles throughout Cybertron and Earth and the like have just been they've told some really incredible stories with that. And I want to touch on the fact that, like, I think G1 Transformers cartoon maybe stands out as just the best of that era of cartoons, along with some select others. And I think the Transformers fandom at large, given the fact that, you mentioned rescue bots, and they remain as impactful, maybe not as impactful, but certainly still impactful to little kids as they grow up, that we still have, the robots in disguise kind of deal going on is pretty cool. But I do want to circle back to the Transformers, the animated movie. Mark, you referenced it. How great was that movie, man?
Ba we grana we ninny bong, man.
That's right. Yeah,
it's
universal
awesome.
greeting. Well, what a cast! There was, Judd Nelson, Leonard Nimoy, Orson Welles, Robert Stack. God, you had an all-star cast in this animated movie.
Yeah, that movie was so amazing that in college I traveled with me a movie poster of it with Hot Rod like down the middle,
almost Star Wars-esque.
Yeah, and that traveled with me through all of my college years, like in my dorm room and into like my first home. I just loved it. Just the fact that they took, what could be seen as a child's cartoon, right? 80s cartoons and action adventures and things like that. And they raised the stakes. So spoilers. We're talking about a 30-year-old movie just about here. More is that they killed everyone. They killed everybody.
It was a slaughter.
Like, it was just a slaughter. And like watching that, it's just like Optimus Prime. I like Transformers, and you see him get blown away. The whole Megatron scene of fall, like shooting him down, and the way he turns gray when he loses the Matrix, like all of that had so much heart and depth to the character, and just making you really feel that there's this war between the Decepticons and the Autobots that has stakes. It's a real war. It's not just the war on drugs and shooting lasers and playing football like in G.I. Joe. There's actual, decimation happening that's going on with the Transformers. And then to be what I never even realized, since the movie was such a big piece for me in the canon, is that like that's really the introduction that you get, I believe, for Hot Rod, Cup, RC, Ultra Magnus, Blur. All these guys that I feel are just seminal characters. But I just feel like these guys are seminal characters, and the big bad Unicron, which is
voiced by Orson Welles.
Yeah, Orson Welles of all people, and a planet-sized Transformers. The great things about Transformers is how they just kept getting bigger and bigger, and having the collaborative Transformers like the Destructicons, the
Constructicons, that formed Devastator, yes.
That made Devastator, these guys, and then Unicron is a planet. Yeah. Planet robot. Just this huge thing.
He's the Transformers Galactus, essentially. And I'm glad you brought up just the wanton sort of slaughter and just death that abounds in the Transformers the movie. It's just called Transformers the movie. I keep referring to it as the animated movie. It's Transformers the movie. Suck it, Michael Bay. But I know they were trying to sell a new toy line, and they were introducing new characters and stuff like that. But the fact that in the early going of this movie, Megatron and Starscream and the like board this Autobot shuttle and brutally murder some of my favorite characters. It is a sort of experience that is unmatched in sort of my childhood fandom watching, because Ratchet, the cool ambulance Autobot, dead. Prowl, the cool police car Autobot, dead. Ironhide, one of my all-time favorite characters. Not only does he kill him, but he tries to stop Megatron pathetically by just wrapping his arms around his legs and gets his head blasted off. It with a great line from Megatron, which
shows
is such heroic
Megatron
nonsense. Yeah, it was this unique demonstration of, as Mark said, stakes in this world. And even on the other side of that, look, the Transformers the movie is one of my favorite movies, period. In the original run, when we were doing movie night on the Best Damn Nerd Show, it got my first perfect score of any movie that we reviewed. I loved this movie, and I have watched it so many times. And one of my favorite moments in any film ever is when we first see Optimus Prime take to the battlefield, and he just says, "Megatron must be stopped, no matter the cost." And it's the classic Transformers sound effect. Stan Bush, who is a titan of music for this movie alone, the touch starts playing, and you see Optimus Prime. He's not brutally slaughtering like Megatron was, but in this scene, it's Optimus Prime at his absolute peak. He runs roughshod over all these Decepticons when all hope seems lost, and it's such a great shining hero moment for him. He gets the duel with Megatron, wins only to be undone by, Megatron's shady tactics and a misstep from Hot Rod, which leads to Optimus getting mortally wounded, but still having the last laugh on Megatron in a way. I love the moment where he does the double uppercut and says never, after Megatron says it's over. It's just that indomitable spirit, even to the end with Optimus Prime. And Mark talked about it, that they kill him and he turns gray. This caused a major stir among parents and children at this time. And again,
it's shocking. Like, you could not get away with having that happen in a children's movie.
It's either this or Grandma. Where do you want to start?
Yeah. It's just the idea, like parents were incensed that their children saw
they have to explain it to them.
Yeah, and in my experience in terms of being such a follower of Optimus Prime, I'm not unique in that sense, and I was experiencing this a little later on than the masses did because of my age. But I remember just being devastated by the fact they killed Optimus Prime, and it was also this weird thing that you sort of learn this lesson. It's like, I blamed Hot Rod for a long time, and watching that movie, I had like angst toward this new shiny character they were trying to introduce me to. It's like, dude, you got my guy killed. Like, I'm not into that. I think maybe if anything else, this was the genesis of my sort of critical eye in terms of how properties dealt with things, because I was upset. I remember Mark, talking to Beast Wars. He would use a sort of Cheetor in the hot rod role various times while we were playing and stuff like that. But yeah, it just it was that movie. The soundtrack is all time. I encourage anyone to go back and listen to it. It's so 80s.
The touch was fantastic. Dare to be Stupid is
by Weird
quintessential Weird Al.
Yeah,
absolutely. Dare. Yeah.
Instruments of Destruction, Hunger by Spectre General, which is one of my anthems to get motivated to this day. And just there's so many, you allude to like characters like Ultra Magnus, who is now a fixture in Transformers lore, voiced by Robert Stack of Unsolved Mysteries. So it's pretty cool stuff there. And then you had the reintroduction of with Leonard Nimoy playing Galvatron, who is the reimagined Megatron type character. But just other moments in that piece, like you had Spike when they're trying to destroy Unicron and they go, oh shit, it's not even dented. Like they cuss in this movie, which I'm sure parents weren't thrilled about at the time either.
And I liked how they added in other societies like the junk bots, the whole Dare to be Stupid, seeing the Bobby
Junkians,
yeah, and that whole thing that they learned the language through radio and TV, and that was adapted into what Bumblebee became in the Michael Bay films. Is like yeah, that makes sense. They got radio antennae, and they're learning language through the power of radio waves.
It's also a lot how we speak to each other in movie quotes and stuff like that. So they were ahead of their time in that way as well. Springer is another character introduced in the movie, and he has one of my favorite lines when they're defending Autobot City, and I still use this. It's they're pinned down and Devastator's formed up, and Springer just goes, "I've got better things to do tonight than die," and he fires a missile off at Devastator. I just so many epic moments in that film. And we'll move on. I could talk about this movie all night long, but
the film's great.
And I think it speaks to just what a cultural moment that was for Transformers to have the cast that they had, and to have the success that it had. Like I'm reading here, it was the final role for Orson Welles and for Scatman Crothers before they passed.
Yeah,
but even just to have those two in the film, and they weren't even like the marquee like voice actors, it's amazing.
Saturday morning cartoons, those type of cartoons were definitely having a moment, and the argument can be made is that Transformers was having that moment more than anyone else. I can say the argument, G.I. Joe's up there, Master of the Universe certainly up there, but Transformers, like you said, the cast that they attracted, and Casey Kasem voices Cliff Jumper in it.
I would argue
it's crazy.
I would argue that they were having the biggest moment because it set off a whole chain of events that leads us to where we are today with tons and tons of Transformers media and toys. The same can't really be said of the other shows on the list.
And, even my angst with Hot Rod, especially in more recent years, the moment when Optimus Prime, you hear his voice say, "Arise, Rodimus Prime," and he leads the Autobots out of there to safety and to victory and everything. Oh, it's the heart that is swelling within this chest right now. It's incredible.
So I will pick one thing apart on that, though. The question I've always had is how come it couldn't just be Hot Rod taking in the Matrix and growing into his person? Why did he have to transform into a convoy type bot?
I think that is just showing sort of his maturity, and that he is not just a hot rod anymore. He is a leader. That was sort of the knock on him. It was always, shoot first, ask questions later, ready, fire, aim, as they say. But in this moment, he matured, just like Optimus Prime had matured from Orion Pax into Optimus Prime. It was his moment, and he became this new leader that was ready. And I think that's sort of what it was denoting there. And I think it's a pretty powerful moment too. Just like when, again, with Leonard Nimoy's voice acting, literally choking the life out of Hot Rod, saying first Prime, then Ultra Magnus, and now you. It's a pity you Autobots die so easily. Otherwise, I might have a sense of satisfaction now. And then, boom, the touch hits, and it is on, and it is so good. It is so. But just even that dialogue in a kid's cartoon is insane. I don't think you could get away with that today.
Mm-hmm. Definitely not.
Yeah. It's so good.
Another great death I want to throw out there: Starscream.
Oh,
Starscream, where he gets like the crown and he's like finally getting anointed and getting all the power and majesty that he's always wanted as a character, and just to be shot through and turned to ash, and you just see him crumbling and falling apart into nothing.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is striking, because they turn him to ash right before our eyes. Starscream, one of the most marquee villains in animated history, and also just in terms of quotability, with Galvatron landing saying "Coronation Starscream, this is bad comedy" is definitely this is bad comedy is a line that I've used many times over the years. Most people don't know where I'm getting it from, but it's from Transformers the movie. And yeah, I'm glad you brought up that death. Let's talk about Beast Wars though, because one of the themes of the Transformers is their ability to adapt and reinvent themselves and transform themselves for the next generation to enjoy. Beast Wars was I think more different than anything else they had tried with Transformers. And I think besides the G1 stuff, it's the best thing that they've done with Transformers. Mm-hmm. I was skeptical about Beast Wars because, I've grown up loving them as cars and jets and stuff like that. They're going to be animals now. Okay, we'll see how this goes. Beast Wars was another one that underrated in terms of it not insulting the intelligence of its audience. What did you think about Beast Wars, Mark?
I mean, I already said that was like really the big thing that got me in, aside from playing with the toys and how just cool it is transforming things. But the way they built their characters, and they were pretty tight-knit groups. I think it started off as like a 5-on-5, something like that, between the Maximals and Predacons. But just the use of the animals and their capers, the way they transformed, but the actual story building they put between building these agencies and how they were battling each other on this prehistoric Earth. And the evolutionary character of Dinobot and his ultimate, sacrifice at the end of it was just storytelling in a child's cartoon, very much akin to what happened in the animated movie. It's just not something you found in like Bobby's World or Eat the Cat or whatever else I was watching at the time.
Don't criticize Bobby's World.
They were great
Classic.
shows. Great shows. Yes. But the severity of what was happening in there,
for sure,
was just a totally another level.
I was telling John during the break as we were talking about Beast Wars is that Dinobot, outside of Optimus Prime and Megatron, maybe Starscream, maybe the greatest Transformers character ever. And the story that they told within Beast Wars, especially go back, watch Code of Hero, or Code Hero, I forget the exact title of it. But it's Dinobot's absolute opus in that show, where he finally definitively picks a side to join with the Maximals and sacrifices his life. He gets killed, and like throughout the whole episode, if you haven't seen it, he's overriding the fact that his hardware is telling him that, hey, you need to shut down, you're low on energon and you're depleting your spark, kind of deal. And there's just so many great moments within that episode, and one that stands out where one of the Predacons is like, what's a warrior without weapons? And he just goes, a warrior still. And attacks him, takes him down, uses a stick to take on Megatron and foil his plans. And when he's literally dying, he has like sign off lines, and he quotes Shakespeare, and he says, tell my trail, tell it truly. the evil and the good, and he says the rest is silence. And when Optimus Primal says, may his spark join with the Matrix, the greatest of Cybertron. Oh, powerful stuff. that is some of the best television you'll see. It's so good.
I think the one of the keys to these shows is like just how beaten down the characters get to like make it through their story arc. And I think, James, that's definitely what you are attracted to with Dinobot, and definitely with Optimus Prime. Like just the amount of abuse that Optimus is willing to take for the other Autobots constantly.
I think they are really good morality plays. And I do appreciate that underdog nature, certainly. And who doesn't like, and with Dinobot, it's just such a great redemption story, and who doesn't love that? That's, one of my favorite things. I think, my favorite character in Lord of the Rings is King Theoden. And while not the same sort of redemption story, he definitely redeems himself throughout the course of those books. And it's very powerful in its telling. And Beast Wars is just great. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that because there's some stuff coming with that, and I was not expecting that here in 2020, but I'm very excited about it. But Mark, before we move on from Beast Wars, some of your favorite characters or toys that you had from that, and I do have to say, watching it after school with you are some of like just etched into my brain some of the best Transformers action that I got in my youth.
Yeah, and I remember it's like having to hoof it home fast because it came on at like 3. Yeah. So I had 20 minutes to like trek home
and run.
Yeah, it's like I got to get home, otherwise I'm not going to know what's going to happen here. And Waspinator is going to be up to some hijinks, and I'm going to miss out. But just the different characters, like Rat Trap was one of my favorite. I loved how mouthy he was, and a bit of a comedic relief in that sense. I like Cheetor being headstrong and young, kind of, as you said, similar to like Hot Rod, what he did. Rhinox being like the firm, steady right hand of Optimus Primal. Just the core group between them was fantastic. And then having this rogue agent Dinobot into the mix was fun. And then on the Predacon side, like Tarantula being the mad scientist kind of guy, very much filling the role of like what Shockwave was for Megatron, other Megatron, which I think was interesting that like Megatron was really the only character to fully transition into the Predacons. And I don't recall if there was what they did in the story with that, or if it was truly just Megatron, because I know at a certain point when you finally discover that it is, prehistoric Earth, and you have Optimus Prime and everyone up on the Ark frozen in stasis, and that's integrated in that. This is in continuity. It's involved with the entire lore of what's going on. It's not just like, we're animals now. It's fitted into a nice package,
which I never expected them to do that. So that to me, like, you predate the MCU by however many years, and we're getting hashtag it's all connected in Beast Wars after school, and it's something that I never would have expected them to do, from it blew my mind, because so not only do we got Unicron's floating head at various points in this series, so they connect it to Transformers the movie. Yeah, like you said, you had the Optimus and the Ark, you had all these things getting tied in that I think as kids that was just so mind-blowing. It was something that we just weren't used to seeing. From there, the Transformers have had multiple moments, and unequivocally
some highs and some even higher.
Well, the Bayformers, the Transformers, according to Michael Bay. John, I know that was sort of maybe a bigger part of your exposure to them. And
it's not to say that I didn't watch all the Transformers, the original cartoons and movie. It's just I was very young, the Transformers the movie came out 2 years before I was born, so like it's
you didn't have me there to shove it down your throat, unfortunately. I blame myself.
Exactly. And so by the time I was even old enough to like really comprehend what was going on and that stuff, like it was already, I think it was even on like Cartoon Network at the time. Like it was like third run of all of this stuff, and like it was I was just into other things. But when the Transformers Michael Bay movies hit, I was down
of age. You were
sure.
It was, and I think
I was probably too old at that point, honestly.
Well, in preparation for this episode, I definitely put myself back in my headspace that I was at, for these movies to be coming out and where I was. And I remember being very on board and very excited because I loved the Transformers and I loved Optimus Prime and I was very hopeful for them. And they did do some things right, most notably getting Peter Cullen back to voice Optimus Prime. I don't know why they put the stupid little flames on the truck or whatever. That was a miss. The first Transformers movie is pretty good. The first Michael Bay one is a fine sort of testament to Transformers and totally, fine with, exposing them to a new generation and everything like that. What followed, in my opinion, not so much. But what is your sort of view on the Bayformers, John?
Why do you got to say it like that?
Sorry.
I think that they're fine. Like, I don't
optics.
think that they're like, I don't think that Michael Bay's strong suit is like writing and, stories that are cohesive and like, always make sense. I think sometimes he goes to some strange places, but I think what it comes down to with those movies is just the sheer action and spectacle of all of it. And, from the point of view of like seeing live action Transformers, I thought they were fun. I thought they were really, really fun. Just the devastation of everywhere that they fought. The special effects, like, for the time were really, really good. And, Michael Bay, the way Michael Bay shoots movies is perfect for it because it's just a bunch of like motion blur and really fast cuts. So you can't really see what's happening.
See, that's the whole thing is that what I love about the literal animation, to me, context is king for my action scenes. And with the quick cuts and the sort of the blur motion, if I can't tell what's going on, you completely lose my buy-in and my care factor. And that's one of my big issues with Michael Bay's action scenes.
Well, and I think in reflection, like, knowing you and knowing what you like about these kinds of properties, like it sounds like I'm gonna shit on you, but I'm not. I promise. This is not an elaborate troll. The original shows were like you're following groups of Transformers.
Yeah,
like that's who you're following. You're listening to their reasoning. It's them versus another group of Transformers. Like, you're fully immersed in that world. And these movies are about the perspective of the humans. It's like, what is it like to be a human and see these giant robots in disguise, like fighting and destroying cities and things like that? Like, it completely changes the whole perspective and the whole story that's being told, because it's not about the robots anymore. It's about how fucking crazy it is for the humans that these robots are even around.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. There definitely were aspects of that in G1, stuff like that with Spike, but they completely changed it in the movies.
The whole point of view is shifted in these movies.
Yeah. And there definitely were some severe missteps, particularly as the franchise went along. Mark, what was sort of your initial take with the Bay universe of Transformers?
Well, I need to parrot what John said about the transition from having your old G1 robots that are very defined as like who they are and what it is. It's easy to tell, like, this is their story and the human is decoration in the background. Yeah. It raises the stakes, but that's it. Yep. But having Sam Witwicky and Shia LaBeouf has never been better than what he did in Transformers 1. That was a awesome movie, perfect for him.
You didn't like Disturbia?
Disturbia was good, but he only got that because of this. Same thing with Eagle Eye, same thing with Lawless. But him in Transformers was fantastic. And Sam Witwicky being the shepherd for the audience into this world of these new crazy, elaborate robots, worked in that regard in making it relatable for audiences. But the uptight shots of all the different mechanics swirling around was a little too much CGI, but Michael Bay knows how to make an action film. Let's not split hairs here. He makes a fantastic action film. Does he get the story across every time?
Did he? But what were we watching by the end though? When there was it? Are the action scenes in Transformers so good? Like, again, there are just times where I think it got worse as it went along.
The scale of it is impressive, and I think when you're seeing it in theaters on a giant screen, like, sure, it is.
It's a spectacle.
these were
spectacle.
definitional like theatrical movies. Like if you don't see this in theater, it's not going to quite hit the same.
Right. Exactly.
But I think how the entire first movie was put together was fantastic.
It's interesting to think about like the animation style, because if you were going to go like 1-to-1, original animation style to like doing a live action version, you would want a lot more wider, like establishing shots. But the way Bay approaches all of his action movies is almost more like anime style, where it's like a lot of like little pieces that that you put together in your mind, and like psychological closure creates the scene in your mind. But like,
but these are robots though, so it's more difficult to do that. I feel like.
Right, because you don't have context. Like, where's this tire? This tire is like seems
what
to
part
be
of that appendage?
Yeah. And then you add in like the explosions and sparks, and it's difficult to track at times.
Yeah, I wish there was less moving parts in the Autobots and the Decepticons when it came to the movies, because like looking at the face of like Bumblebee or Optimus Prime with the rotating eyes and all the extra pieces was like frightful. It did not translate well up on the screen. Like give them the faceplate, leave the faceplate, perfect. Because I mean we're suspending belief, right? Here's living AI. Robots in
disguise, yo.
Why can't they have an actually formed face of like solid features that is malleable metal? Why not? Why does it have to be all the individual little gears and you see the stuff moving and pumping?
They are aliens.
They are
alien robots. Yeah.
So like, I'd
That's
suspend
really
the belief. Like, show me something a little more in that vein.
Yeah.
Right, we already had T-1000 by this point too, by the sum of at least 15 years or so. So we know how to make liquid metal. Make it malleable. Let's run with it.
I have to give credit to Michael Bay in this franchise of movies. At least she was in 2 of them, for introducing me to Megan Fox, who I did not know who she was before then, and she certainly. We're talking about Transformers having a moment because of these movies. She had a moment as sort of like the it girl in terms of being like the desirable, just femme fatale, beautiful Hollywood actress. And she is a smoke. No doubt about it. She is a smoke.
Mark, bites the hand that feeds her.
Mark, you could call her out for having toe thumbs. That's like an actual condition.
Toe thumbs.
And she seems like a sweet person.
How do you even
got toe
notice
thumbs?
It's ridiculous.
I have eyes.
Bite the hand that feeds her.
You're looking in the wrong place.
And she bites the hand that feeds her.
Her eyes are up here, Mark.
She would be anything without Michael Bay.
I will say something negative about Michael Bay in these movies. It doesn't have to do with Transformers lore, but I was watching an interview with Michael Bay, and I forget who else was in this segment, but it was one of the actors in the movies, and they were saying how they almost walked off the set because of how Michael Bay treated people, and then they were talking about him and like his theory for filmmaking, which is that he basically just treats everybody like shit, so that because he believes that everyone needs like one villain, like one thing to focus on to be upset about, because then all the other hard parts about making a movie they're not going to be upset about. They're going to get out of their own way and like make good movies. And so he kind of like, and he like self-describes this as like sacrificing himself and putting himself on the altar of sacrifice. So
that's great
for the greater good of the movie.
That's great.
No, it's
he
not
has
great,
a vision and he's going
what
for
it actually means is he's just a fucking asshole who's finding ways to justify treating people like shit. That's a complete farce in terms of management styles. You could just be nice to your employees. How about that? But instead you're some damaged freak, and so you have to go around hurting everybody else that works for you.
Well, that's why when he was shooting whatever movie it was in China and that guy threw the boombox at him, I applauded him as a freedom fighter and a hero.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and look, like no doubt the man has been extremely successful, and
Bad Boys,
for better or worse, that strategy has seemed to put together some major blockbuster hits. But it's ridiculous. The justification for it's completely absurd, and I side with anyone who felt uncomfortable working for him, because I would hate that too.
Yeah, I side with Megan Fox as well. And
she called him a Nazi
for different reasons.
Well, I side with Megan Fox, and
He's
if she wants to DM me, she can do so.
About my toe thumbs.
Okay, all right. That's a condition that she has, and as she's my future wife, Mark, I don't think you should make fun of her for it. It's very rude. Let's move on. Beyond the Michael Bay Transformers franchise, there's been a lot of other ones over the years, but
difficult to top, by the way.
Not
just
very
because of the heights that they reached. The heights that they reached were so high.
Look, Bumblebee with John Cena, just by virtue of the fact that John Cena's in it. That's awesome.
I'm just going by box office numbers, baby.
But okay, so that I will say is, Michael Bay's involvement or whatever he did to them aside, it is cool that the Transformers do bring in the dollars. I love that Optimus Prime and Bumblebee and the crew, that they still put butts in the seats. That's wonderful. I'm glad that we can move on from those now. And there was a point where I was worried that Michael Bay was going to take on every project from my childhood and ruin them. But I'm happy to learn that there are things that our children will be learning about the Transformers that do not come from Michael Bay. And this is for you two as parents. You're getting to sort of show your kids the Transformers through rescue bots. What has that been like?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're great little like vignette shows, and like, they have like little lessons in them, and they're cool. Yeah, I don't know. They're kind of everything you want for a show for toddlers.
How is your little one taken to it?
It's hit and miss, but he's kind of like that with everything that's not the Disney Cars movie.
Fair. Well, he'll come along.
Yeah.
He'll come along. Mark, what's it been like for you? Because yours is a little bit older.
A little bit older. She calls it robots. And it's very fun. It's a refreshing breath of air from Corey Carson or Word Party or a lot of these other things.
We're deep in Word Party. I think I'm on my 17th watch.
Oh, Word Party. That panda is soulless in the eyes.
We actually have the Bailey doll somewhere around here.
Oh my God. But Rescue Bots is really fun because what's great is it tries to put itself within the actual like lore and theme of Transformers with Optimus Prime in the first episode, where here we have these rescue bots that are supposed to be like these like reserve troops, if you would, during dire situations. These Autobots that are going to come down and help when needed, like these garrisoned units. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, really? We're going to treat you four as a sort of like a PR firm for the Autobot cause, and you guys got to just help out this small little town with all their little silly needs. But shh, you're a robot in disguise. Shh, don't tell anyone. And so it's all of the like character arc and story development is these robots hiding who they are as robots, and giving all the praise to these snotty human operators who are like, my plane doesn't fly right, stupid plane. Or like, shut up, fire engine, I want to use the hose.
But it's funny, like in Transformers style, there is like a weight to what they're doing, though. Like, it's important that they do it right, which is fun too. But they're not getting their limbs chopped off the way you would.
I worry about the message of like to hide who you are. Like, no one can accept who you are. You need to hide it. You're a robot in disguise, even though you know what's right. And these people are stupid. Listen to them, because shh, don't let anyone know.
It teaches good customer service skills, dude.
Well, I am very happy that you're getting to show your kids the Transformers in this way. And we're going to talk about, what sort of they'll be able to grow up with on the other side when we talk about the War for Cybertron trilogy. But I do have to reference a couple more things. One is our very own Imperial Commissar, Jeff Budd, did the show outline for this, and his annotations and notes. He's notable by his absence here, as he's not a huge Transformers fan, but I couldn't pass this little nugget on Bumblebee, the movie. And one of his little subheadings is John Cena is in this. Despite his convincing performance, he actually was not a robot in this movie. Oh my God.
John Cena's great on film. The Marine is one of my all-time favorites.
I love John Cena, but just the fact that I can hear Jeff Budd's voice in that writing is just so good. It's a testament to his show outline skills. Another note that I have to bring up before we go to break is the GoBots, which, this will take our listeners back to the Sega versus Super Nintendo debate, which you two were a part of, and it is one of our.
We're part of the winning side.
Certainly, you were on a side, certainly. But much like the Sega Genesis, I sort of viewed through a certain economic tint in terms of the poor factor. So too did I view the GoBots as like this knockoff, Safeway Select brand robot in disguise. It wouldn't be until many years later that I realized that the GoBots actually predated Transformers and they just were absorbed as less successful. Therefore, the Transformers as the victors wrote the history book on that. But yeah, if you
also,
had GoBots
James,
as opposed to Transformers, I did not.
Sometimes the Safeway,
we couldn't be friends.
Sometimes the Safeway Kroger knockoffs are better too. What about Mr. Pibb? That's an alternative.
I'm a Dr. Pepper guy. He got his degree.
Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pibb Extra just trying way too hard.
Right.
Dude,
but if you were a
Meanwhile,
GoBots
Dr.
kid,
Pepper has a new cream soda out. Check it out.
Okay. Thank you. But if you were a GoBots kid, I don't know. There's just something not all there. Something wasn't right. I want to end this segment though talking about BotCon because it is just one of those things that even before going to Comic-Con and stuff like that, like I mentioned earlier in the segment, going to BotCon is definitely on my list of things that I want to do. And they have a Transformers Hall of Fame ceremony that they do. And Mark, I know really wanted to talk about this. As on the original run, Mark was the bastion of the Toy Hall of Fame and making sure that we always talked about the Museum of Play, and certainly Transformers
Friends of the show
have their place there. But yeah, BotCon does a Transformers Hall of Fame. They induct both human inductees for, real people that have influenced, Transformers over the years. And they also induct characters and stuff like that. So what do you think about this Transformers Hall of Fame at BotCon, Mark?
I think, first of all, that's absolutely wonderful because we're playing with a mythos that has so many different characters and so many different properties between series, movies, games, toy lines. Sometimes there was toys that didn't even have a character, and so they had to go above and beyond to include them. And that's one thing that's really cool about like the comic books is that they try to put in characters that like a toy existed. And they always felt like it was always terrible getting a toy that didn't exist in your show or whatever. So let's write that guy into the script and do it. And so with all these different facets of lore, let's do a Hall of Fame. I mean, Transformers is big enough now. It's really defined what robot
yes.
fans geek over. And I think it's neat that they have like the human side versus like the character side of things, like what character is influential. And there's some great ones that have been inducted, and I'd love to like go through the list with you guys here about who was inducted in the different classes and how come certain people didn't show up. Just first off the bat, talking about the humans that have been inducted there. Bob Badansky, who's the guy that predominantly wrote all the lore and most of the creator, or mostly created all the characters that Transformers became, is in there, which is fantastic. But where's Denny O'Neil? He made Optimus Prime. Without Optimus Prime, what do you got? Where's Denny O'Neil?
Where's Optimus Prime? Is this like our Bill Finger situation with with Transformers?
We'll call him Optimus Prime. You do the rest.
Oh my god. Well, and then you got Ono Kojin, who is the designer of the first Transformers toys, obviously deserves to be in there. Stan Bush, who we referenced, some of those, the vocalist on so many of those great songs from Transformers the movie, maybe the most quintessential 80s movie soundtrack of all time, along with Vince DiCola, who did, he was the composer for the movie. Peter Cullen, of course, the long-standing voice of my childhood as Optimus Prime, of so many people's childhoods. He is the definitive Optimus Prime now and forever, for everybody. It's Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime, and everybody else is just impersonating him, in my opinion. Notable inclusion that I wish we could take out is Michael Bay is in this Hall of Fame.
But think about it. That's what Transformers is kind of now, or at least has been the last decade. To be frank.
It's changing now.
Changing now with War of Cybertron, which I can't wait to get into you on the next panel. But yeah, Michael Bay's got to be in there. Steven Spielberg, I guess. I mean, he was involved.
Yeah. Chris Latta, Starscream, and of course, he was on G.I. Joe as well. I mean, Cobra Commander on G.I. Joe. He's just an iconic voice actor. Frank Welker, the voice of Megatron and Soundwave. Obviously, he's in the same way that Peter Cullen is the definitive Optimus. Frank Welker is the definitive Megatron. Although I will say the voice actor for Megatron and Beast Wars, tremendous.
Yeah. I feel like there was a miss in what they're doing with like the humans in the Hall of Fame, is that they should have included like Spike or Sam into this faction.
Oh. Yeah.
I know they're characters, but like to really play up the Transformer mythos, it's like, these are the humans. Yeah, the director of the movie, and Spike, he helped with the resistance on Earth.
Well, here's some cool notes about the Hall of Fame is that each human inductee is given a trophy of Optimus Prime holding up the Matrix of Leadership, which how badass is that? And look, I'm not a guy, I don't have any tattoos. I don't think I'm cool enough to pull them off. But the only one that I've ever even thought about remotely is if I ever got into good shape is getting the Matrix of Leadership on my chest.
Nice.
Because the Matrix of Leadership is so cool. But that's never going to happen. But I would settle for a trophy of Optimus holding it up. And then each character that is inducted with the fans' choice is given a music video. And the music video is set to The Touch, which is just such like we have to go to this when they resume it after the pandemic. It just sounds like this is right up our alley. There's so much nostalgia feels with this. Like they're doing it right, man.
It's very good. So yeah, I'd love for us to like talk about. And so this obviously started back in 2010, and so they've been doing classes kind of like every year since. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we got to talk about the first 3 years. Like, who is your quintessential? Who is making the cut as your definitional Transformers?
Well, I think that they got I think the first class you could have just done 2 from each side. You could have you do Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, and you do Megatron and Starscream, because that's G1 at its core. That's your leader and Optimus, your sidekick and Bumblebee, and you have the opposing side with Megatron and Starscream on that same front. And I think in that original first class, though, we also got Dinobot from Beast Wars, which is a cool addition.
Which is so great. Well. I think it's amazing that a Beast Wars character made it into the first class.
Well, I think
the fact that it was a fan favorite pick, where it's like the fans clamor for it, like, you got to have this guy.
It speaks to his impact that we were talking about earlier on Beast Wars, that outside of Optimus and Megatron, I go Dinobot, and I know some people would maybe say Bumblebee or Starscream, and no argument that they're great, but Dinobot, just the terms of the well-written appeals that he had in Beast Wars are incredible. Notable human omissions, though. I think with Dare to Be Stupid being in the animated movie, we got to get Weird Al in there. I want to see him holding up that Optimus with the Matrix and giving a really weird speech. I think that's got to happen. Any omissions for you, Mark, that you'd like to see put in there that jump out to you?
On the character side?
Either one.
Character side, because I mean, at this point, there's been quite a few different classes that have been inducted, and you have a lot of the ones you would normally think of, like Ironhide, Soundwave, Ratchet, Waspinator, Grimlock, Jazz, Wheeljack. The list goes on. But ones I didn't see on there, considering you have Galvatron and you have Rodimus Prime and Ultra Magnus, which I really like Ultra Magnus.
Yeah.
No Unicron.
Yeah, that one stood out to me too.
Planet-sized baddie. Unicron. You gotta have Unicron into
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you mentioned a name of one that I thought for sure would be in from Beast Wars, and I don't see him on this list. I don't see Rat Trap in there.
Yeah, no Rat Trap, no Cheetor. If you get into the comic books, Razor Beast should have been a quintessential. I mean, if you go into the Beast Wars comics, there's, I think, 2 different miniseries that came out. Razor Beast is the hero of that comic series. And they even go up against Unicron. in there, which is crazy too. The fact that he's come back around into that lore as well. These guys should definitely be within the top classes there, and the fact that they've gone on all these years and haven't touched them is crazy. Like, not Rat Trap, not Cheetor. I know they have, Soundwave on here, and Soundwave undeniably is one of the coolest.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite. He was probably my favorite Decepticon growing up.
But with him, I mean, you got to have Laserbeak.
Laserbeak was on the ballot this year.
Yeah,
I voted.
Did you vote?
I did vote. I voted for Hound, who was the Transformer that the military G. I loved Hound from G1. Hound was great. And so he was definitely one of my favorites growing up. So I threw him my vote. It's a tough class. Laserbeak almost got it, as did Jetfire, who's not in there.
And that's another
which
one.
was
Jetfire,
surprising.
Especially, I mean, all three of these guys are in the new War for Cybertron that we'll get into.
Yes.
But Jetfire was such a defining role of that series. I could see him coming ahead, especially with the release of that series now and the voting happening.
From the human side, the voice actor for Dinobot, Scott McNeil's not in. That's a miss. Need to make that right. Need to fix that, because he is a standout there. But we could go on and on. Is there any pick another, if you have one or two that you would like to see going in for this upcoming one? Who do you think it should be in there the most?
Astro Train.
Okay.
Dude, Astro Train. He was a Triformer, so not only was he a giant space shuttle that carried all the Decepticons, he also turned into a train and a giant fucking robot. Astro Train was dope, and he loved oppressing the poor. Like, he was such a good baddie. Astro Train was awesome, and when I don't see any Triformers,
just like the billionaires in Pittsburgh who built him.
I just don't see anything of like him on this.
Gotcha.
I think Astro Train was cool, and I don't know if you would install the Insectabots as one. I don't think any particular one
the
really stood out. Yeah, the Insecticons ever really stood out. I mean, I know Grimlock made it in 2012, and you don't see any of the other.
I don't see my one if I had to choose, and I didn't see him on the ballot, but my one that I would have put on the ballot would have been Springer from Transformers the movie. Dude turns into a helicopter. He had like a samurai sword as well. Had some of the best lines in the animated film, and was just a real standout character.
I would have definitely put the Mountain Dew machine that turned into a Transformer from the Michael Bay movies.
That would have been your pick, John.
Yeah, for
You'd have just inducted Michael Bay again.
Yeah.
Megan Fox is one. Shia LaBeouf. I mean, you could have been done.
Yeah.
Shia LaBeouf should be on it.
Didn't they also transform like an Xbox or something?
There
was an Optimus Prime that transformed out of, I think, a PS2.
That's good marketing right there.
Yeah. And so that came out obviously a while back.
As we close out this
cool
segment, some of my most prized possessions today are the more recent Optimus Prime releases that are throwing it back to G1 or the animated movie. One of my prized display pieces is the Optimus Prime movie G1 Optimus Prime, and he goes on this little stand and you hit a button and some of the lines like spout off and stuff like that, and he lights up. It's an incredible piece, and it is the holy grail for a lot of Transformers collectors, and I'm not the holy grail, I don't want to overstate it, but for it in terms of just being a seminal piece, it is very, very beloved, and I'm fortunate enough to have one on display. So they've done such a good job with the toys, all of the iterations of the series. And now we have Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy, starting with Siege. We're going to take a break. It was the first chapter on Netflix, and we're going to talk about it on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show. And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. One final segment, and we are going to be getting into Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy, Siege on Netflix. It's only 6 episodes, so if you haven't watched it, pause this part of the podcast or the YouTube video, go watch it, come back, because we're going to get into all sorts of spoilers and everything for Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy here with Chapter 1, Siege. Overall thoughts, Marco, before we get into the detail
So when I first put this on, I was trying to get my daughter hooked onto it because
Which
we
I
were already
appreciate
watching
that, Mark. You're
Rescue
doing the
Bots.
Lord's work.
We were already watching Rescue Bots. And I was like, yeah, this is fine, but like, I want more Optimus Prime and stuff. And like, I'm a Ratchet guy. Let me see some Ratchet. And so when this came out,
You
I threw
are
it on,
Ratchet.
and my God, is it much darker than what Rescue Bots was putting out there? Or, I mean,
yeah, I'd say it's quite a leap.
It was quite a tonal change, and it was great. I mean, because it took what aspects of the movie that I enjoyed growing up, where there's stakes and there's consequences, and it seems a little more real and grit to it, right? I mean, it's the Civil War happening, and it felt very much in vein of that, but it treated it with just utmost respect, and the story that was laid out there, and the way that they did it, where you can really hop on here without having any other Transformers, because it's introductory between Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. It's setting the stage and gives you all the information you need to know about where the Civil War is now with what's happening. And the fact that it's just a 6 episode miniseries makes it extremely digestible as a movie. You can sit down and just bust it out in one night.
Yeah,
no problem.
You bust it out. Look, full disclosure, I've watched it all the way through twice already, and certain episodes more times than that. And so it is a very easy, quick watch at only 6 episodes. The animation, which we'll talk more about, it's beautiful. It looks like
great.
It looks like G1 Transformers meets Beast Wars with the 2020 animation facelift, like in terms of how they did it, which is tremendous.
It looks iconic, but it looks better.
Yeah.
It's great.
I will always be partial to the
animation
80s
style.
I will always be partial to the 80s animation style. But again, if we're going to get this animation style, this is probably as good as it gets from that front. So they did a really good job with that. I do like the tone and tenor of the series. And Mark's right. You can jump on right here, and because they're doing certain things differently, you don't really need to know much more than that. If you do, you'll appreciate certain things. And I venture to guess that as we get into chapter 2 and 3, whenever they do come out, you'll appreciate things even more. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But overall, I really enjoyed it. And I do have some, to the shock of no one, some minor issues with it. But I left feeling like this is Transformers in a really good place. And I'm very excited for, maybe people that are, a little older than your kids, but not much older, of like my age when I first discovered the Transformers, being able to watch this show and fall in love with these characters and the story and everything like that. So as opposed to how I felt maybe seeing kids with the Michael Bay Transformers on their backpacks and stuff like that, this War for Cybertron trilogy, I think it has Transformers proper and the main story arc in just a really, really cool spot. And so I'm very heartened overall by this show. And I thought it was a really fun time. And full disclosure, another friend of mine, Mark, texted me that he said, this Transformers show is great. Real different in some ways, but I like it. My response to that was real different. And he said stuff like, when the show opens, Bumblebee is on his own, hasn't picked a side yet. And I sort of responded, I was like, hasn't picked a side yet. Like, I came in sort of skeptical about what they were doing, but they nailed it, especially in terms of the Bumblebee character and certain other things. John, you have some sort of interesting tales about this show. Can you share with our audience sort of your involvement on it in a weird way?
Yeah, I mean, involvement. I wasn't, directly part of the production, but I was.
John voiced Optimus Prime. Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I was working at Machinima when they first sold this show to Netflix, and it was the Machinima development team that sold it, and Machinima was going to do all of the production and animation, everything for it. And then in 2000, at the end of 2018, AT&T bought Warner Brothers and then closed Machinima. So this project was kind of floating around for a little bit. One of Warner Brothers' other companies took the project on and has seen it to completion. But it was, it was still produced by that same team that started it at Machinima. So while I was there working on completely unrelated projects, we were doing table reads for this project and like helping them with the timings of the writing, and they were like recording it and doing like initial sketch work for it. So it was cool to see them, you know, conceptualizing it at the beginning. And I will say, like, FJ and Matt, who really like carried the torch for this thing from beginning to end, had a lot of reverence for the original series. I mean, Matt is our age, FJ's a little bit older, but like they clearly had a lot of respect for the original series and clearly are fans of it. And I think it really shows in the work. And it's cool to like, you know, have been near the genius that put this together.
That's super rad.
Wish I could take more credit for it.
No, but that's still super rad. Again, just to be in that proximity. God, I would have been losing my mind to be that close to this production. And
yeah, you know,
like
at the time I was so busy on what I was working on that I probably didn't like appreciate it fully. But like, you know, sitting at a table, I don't even remember like what character I like voiced for the table read that I was helping them with. But like sitting at a table with all my coworkers and we're like reading one of the scripts. I don't even think it's one of the scripts from like this first part of the miniseries. I think it's one from like later on because I didn't recognize any of it.
Probably just Ironhide, something minimal.
But it was, yeah, it's I guess I didn't appreciate it enough, you know, now in retrospect, seeing the series and what it looks and feels like. But also like I'm not, you know, admittedly, like I'm not a huge like animation guy, so it was just hard for me to like imagine how it would all come together. But I gotta say I'm very proud of these guys for what they did.
Yeah, I mean the reviews are in and everybody is really loving, you know, this series. Mark, what really stood out to you on the positive side from this show, like in terms of characters or moments that you really liked?
I liked how it wasn't like these super one-dimensional characters. The fact that you start off with a Bumblebee that hasn't chosen this side, kind of a darker, broody Bumblebee than this jovial disc jockey talking guy that's in the Michael Bay stuff. You know what I mean? I like that initial tonal shift that was in there, and that Wheeljack was used as like the shepherd to bring him into the fold was great, because Wheeljack always had this amazing look to him, but I didn't know enough about him. I just know he looked awesome and he had the glowing face cheeks, you know?
Yeah, I always loved Wheeljack, and it's actually a cool allusion to G1 that I believe the first two Transformers we see in the first episode are Wheeljack and Bumblebee, just like in this series.
Yeah, and so it was cool for me getting to be introduced to him, and the way that they find Ratchet as kind of this like rogue medic out in the field, just saving anyone he can. Again, like kind of denouncing his Autobot self, but wanting to continue doing good and fixing people and being this lone surgeon out there was great. So just overall, the tone of it really spoke to me, and just the way that they crammed so much lore into what they were doing in the show, not only with introducing the Guardians, which I had no concept about. I don't know how new that concept is or not, because I wasn't a part of GS1. But the Guardians with these like giant, almost celestial like robots that can't be bothered with the Civil War. We're gonna sit back and watch how this transpires.
Almost like the Watchers.
Yeah. Some Guardians you are.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah. But Optimus even says as much in the show, which was a cool moment.
But it was cool seeing that, you know, that, and then going to the what was it, like the Sea of Rust, and like there's this mythical Badlands where you go there, and then like these kind of zombie like
looking for another spark, which
for
was
a spark.
very cool idea.
Lost their spark. What was just the
it's
way
like
that
the
they
Walking
did this,
Dead, but in Transformers.
Yeah, and the world building they put within what was happening on Cybertron was crazy, and just the character development they had, because they had all the, you know, the people you wanted to see, like Wheeljack, like Ratchet. Jetfire was a little newer for me. I didn't know a whole lot more about him, and the fact that they took him from Decepticon, spoiler, to Autobot, kind of at the end, was a great story. Because again, I'm a Dinobot fan, and seeing this transition to someone that's like, look, I'm towing the company line, and I know this is what we have to do, but what you're preaching now goes against the actual evolution and and sustainability of our race. Like this is not actually what you're doing. You're going over your own perverted goals, was kind of his thought against Megatron.
I want to jump in right there, because I think if you had to pick an MVP of Chapter 1 with Siege, I think it's Jetfire. I think he had the, Bumblebee close, but I think Jetfire had this really cool characterization, and him switching sides is not a new idea. He was sort of this explorer that had landed on Earth, before the Autobots and Decepticons. And he's, with Megatron in the one episode, and sort of realizes by the end, it's like, yeah, these aren't my people. And he joins up with the Autobots. Mm-hmm. But in this one, he's with them for a much larger part of, this chapter. And so you get to see him on both sides of it, which is really cool. By the end, he is an honorable character. And he sort of, when you first are introduced to him, you think maybe he's a little bit more bloodthirsty. But how he is animated is some of the best. Like how they do his sword and everything is really cool. His characterization, everything about him, I feel like screamed that he was the MVP of Chapter 1 to me.
Just the way he treated Starscream, because like you come into this, Megatron, Starscream. Again, those are like the MVPs of the Decepticon lore in general, and the fact that you have Starscream starting to lip up, acting very Starscreamy, and he gets his hand severed off by Jetfire, just be like, shut up, we're doing this is my call, like you ain't stepping out of line. That just elevated Jetfire. Was like, oh, he's a big bad. And then seeing how he interacts with Megatron, which I actually really liked how they did Megatron, because he seemed more like I wouldn't say like a benevolent despot, but very much like a reluctant one, where it's like he really wanted to do something good, but he kept getting this dark, twisted means to achieve his goals, both with the influence of Starscream and the influence of Shockwave as like this mad scientist character, and Jetfire was his sergeant or corporal that was trying to be like, well, let's keep doing this way, like you have a good vision, let's do it the right way.
Megatron is very much in this series, at least at the outset, somebody who has lived long enough to see himself become the villain, and I like the approach that these Autobots and Decepticons, they're playing on the fact that, look, they were at one point fighting for the same thing, and that at a certain point there was a schism where Megatron made a choice, murdered Alpha Trion, and became a perversion of what he was fighting for. And I thought they did that layering really well in this series in a lot of ways. Like, one of my favorite scenes from the whole series is Ultra Magnus. First of all, when Ultra Magnus shows up in the cloak at the Decepticon base, even though it doesn't really make sense that he would be cloaked, it's such a cool visual, and it is a really standout visual from the whole series. But the scene where they're sitting across from another at the table and like, do you remember the Battle of Tarnhauser Gate? And how they talk about they mutually saved one another's lives, and just talking about this war. It's just two old war generals talking about past battles. I was like, God, this is some good stuff right here. And even though he's killed pretty early on, well, I guess midway through the series, Ultra Magnus loomed really large in this thing, and I think they did him justice as well. Even though at first I'm like, oh man, they're having Ultra Magnus surrender. What are they doing to this guy? But then you get it and you understand what's going on. I thought he was really, really good. And as they didn't go down the road of trying to kill off Optimus, obviously with the state of the timeline that we're in here, but killing off Ultra Magnus here, I was surprised, and I thought it came off really well.
Yeah, they did a couple deaths that I thought worked extremely well, again, for upping the stakes and so forth. But none of them was pointless throwaways, like the Ultra Magnus using him, and then again, like just desecrating his body to send that virus after the Alpha Trion particles, which was just a piece of lore that I wasn't familiar with. I mean, I know the Matrix of Leadership and that with Optimus Prime, but the Alpha Trion particles, where it's like all the sentient knowledge in the past for Autobots, I thought was really cool lore that was just unfamiliar to me. And the fact that they were able to wipe it out with a computer virus by harvesting Ultra Magnus's husk, if you would, and weaponizing it, was really dark, but a really cool turn when you're talking about
Shockwave
like
was very much so like a Fabius Bile, or I forget the Game of Thrones character.
Shockwave was
analog.
Great. I really liked him. in
Yeah.
this.
And I could have done with some more Soundwave, but another death that was pardon the pun, but it was impactful, was Impactor.
Impactor was awesome.
Decepticon turned quasi Autobot ally, at least Ratchet's ally, and his death was really good. And like the fact that he saw, he thanks Ratchet for showing him the light right before he dies, and just he was great. I loved Mirage in this too, and sort of him putting himself on the line. Yeah. Who are some of your other standout characters from this?
Ratchet acting as the Rogue Doctor, of course, which led into the evolution of Impactor, and his sacrifice was essential. Moonracer was super cool. All the female bots, because previous to this, I only really knew RC from the movie,
and I would have loved some more of her.
Yeah, and she did some good stuff with what's his name, like Shadowbox, or what's like the off-brand
and Bumble. They had their cool little mission. Sound Blaster. Yeah.
Yeah, they do their little mission there to get some like black market energon. But the fact that you had RC, you had Alita 1, who was basically the stand-in Ultra Magnus after he departed, and then you had Moonracer. These 3 fembots were all really strong characters.
Yeah,
Chromia. Yeah, Chromia
looked like Cup.
Yep, and what
Alita
Chromia
1
was like
to me.
Alita 1 was great, and Chromia was like this super sniper, just offing people. And then a death that was super impactful is when they're going against the Sparkless in the Sea of Rust. Is Moonracer, how she just gets devoured by these Sparkless bots. That was a heavy thing because again, you're with this character for all these episodes, and you're going along with her on this mission, and she's the sacrifice that's made to get the job done.
I thought Alita 1 was along maybe with Jetfire, Bumblebee, and Alita 1 from the Autobot side in terms of who really stood out that maybe got lots of time to shine. She was really cool, and I loved all of that.
Were you shipping her? Were you shipping her and Optimus, though?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's where I was going. Yeah, because you have that sort of romantical moment.
There was something going on.
The first episode, absolutely, it was. And they didn't overdo it, and I thought it was really good, just the illusions there. Definitely shipping her and Optimus, and that's why it makes it all the more sort of poignant that she, just like in G1, stays behind on Cybertron to fight the good fight. I do have to point out in terms of something negative that I feel like was a drawback to this trilogy, and I think that they will correct it in the future chapters. They did a lot of the characters justice with some cool new twists. I don't think that they nailed Optimus Prime. He had a lot of standout lines and stuff like that. I did not appreciate how he got his ass handed to him at almost every turn. With no real sort of explanation. They could have laid it on a little thicker. Oh, he's low on energon. But Megatron whooped that ass right in episode 1. I was like, okay, like I'm fine with Megatron getting the better of him, but Optimus was just like flailing around, was completely ineffective. And not only that, he was, and I know where we're at in the timeline, and they're trying to show him growing into this leader, but it's kind of incongruent in certain parts where they're like sort of out of hope. And he's making bad decisions. Like, he's a bad leader in a lot of respects in this first chapter. And I have a feeling that they're going to come correct on that in chapters 2 and 3. But I thought they did it a little. He was a little too inept in Siege here for me.
Well, what I think is what they were trying to do, and important to note, is that in the timeline of what's happening here is that very much the Decepticons are ruling Cybertron at this point, and Autobots are the remnants of these heathenist rebels trying to overthrow the status quo now.
I mean, they even say, most of them say they're not even soldiers in the first episode, right? They're just
quite a bit. There's people like not claiming one side or the other. Yeah, it's like this is just what's happening, and what's really neat is like the battle damage that you see upon Megatron and Optimus, and for us to get established into what's happening in the story, that here's this leader, he's very altruistic, and they kind of go through that through a few different dialogue scenes. But like, yeah, he's a bit at the end of his rope. I mean, there's only so much you can throw yourself in front of a grenade before it takes its toll. You know what I mean? And that's what this whole like Hail Mary of a mission to get this final energon, to open the space bridge, to get the arc flying and get the hell out of here.
I'm fine with all of that.
Had to be achieved.
I'm fine with all of that. He does come off, though, I think if you were to watch it again, as a little too sort of inept or ineffective at times. And that, again, as we've talked about the whole Transformer segments here about what Optimus Prime is, he's already gone through this war, to, I assume overthrow the Quintessons and, fighting alongside Megatron and Ultra Magnus and Alpha Trion and stuff like that. He is tested. It's not his first rodeo, and he is a little bit ineffective, a little bit too inept at times during this first chapter. And I hope they correct that, because I think even though we couldn't have Peter Cullen, I think the voice actor did a really good job. I think he looks great. I loved how Optimus looked in this series, which, compared to the Bayformers and stuff like that, Optimus hasn't always looked good to me outside of G1 or some of the other iterations. He looked great here, but I would have liked to have, I thought he should have gotten a couple more hero moments in this first chapter. I'm not saying dominate, because again, then where's like the friction, where's the central tension, but a little bit like if I'm a kid and I'm watching Optimus Prime, it's like, God, this guy just can't do anything right.
Why is he the leader?
Yeah, why is he the leader? And also there's the moment where they're talking about taking the Allspark off of Cybertron and how that will kill Cybertron. And Optimus is just cool with it. He's like, he's just going to do it anyway. That's a problem. That's a big problem.
It's not that I think he's ineffectual. It's that he's a little too stubborn. It's like, this is my thought. And people are like, I don't know, Optimus. He's like, no, it's my thought. This is what we're doing.
He consults with
like, he wasn't
Alita
listening
1.
to anyone.
He consults with Alita 1 quite a bit, though, during the show.
Well, he talks to her, then he shoots her down when she has an opinion that differs from what he wanted to do from the outset.
I don't think that was it.
I get accused of that at home all the time.
Like, you just want me to agree with you.
No, dude, Alita, that was the whole thing. Alita 1 at one point calls him out, and it's like, microseconds ago, you were questioning this whole plan. And it's like, oh, man, why? Yeah, why is he the leader? We're going to do these 3 things, and hopefully it works. And I'm taking the Allspark off of Cybertron, even though, according to legend, it will kill the planet we're from.
Which is crazy. Yes. I mean, that is pretty hard, but it's kind of like, yeah, but we're Autobots and they're Decepticons, so screw them. They should be down in the mines working while we're out in the glory of the sun.
Well, and I like that layer too of sort of the patrician aspect. There's like the patrician and plebeian aspect of, these factions coming together and fighting for the common cause, but there still is that sort of socio angst from the Decepticons towards the Autobots that they played off really well. It was hard for me seeing Ratchet be such a prick to Prime, because Ratchet's one of my favorite characters, and he is not having any of Optimus stuff. It played well.
He's not drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, and I get that I'm looking forward to seeing what Ratchet and Optimus's relationship is like at the end of this series, because I hope that they pay this off and we get Paragon Prime and he is just this badass, and maybe explain why his power level increases, because his power level's got to increase, and he's got to get the big blaster rifle, and he has to wreck shop. He needs some big time hero moments moving forward in this series. But that was my biggest issue with the series was Optimus Prime's sort of leadership issue. And I get the story they're trying to tell. I think they may have just laid on his ineffectuality a little bit too thick here in chapter 1. I think the other thing is I wish there were more episodes, so that I think if it was a longer first chapter, maybe we could have seen more of that growth in him by the end. So maybe that wouldn't have been as much of a problem.
I mean, I feel like it's a pretty concise story in how it's paced out. I mean, definitely by, I want to say like episode 3, you were just binging the rest of it. It did keep getting better and better
as it went along, for sure.
Yeah. Which makes it a nice, concise chapter into the overall arc that they're going. So I'm really excited about the fact that they've already kind of teased out there what the second and the third chapters are going to be like and where the story is evolving to. It just gives me hope.
So yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the main takeaway from this, like I said at the start, Transformers, including Optimus, despite certain misgivings about how he was treated, they're all in a very good place overall with this War for Cybertron trilogy. Chapter 2, Earthrise, I think we all know where they're going there, and I think that maybe is where we're going to see what I want from Prime and everything, and him coming into his own. And I want him to be that inspirational leader that when hope dwindles, he kindles, and everything like that. I want to hear a very authoritative transform and roll out. I love in this series that they use "Till All Are One" as a battle cry. It's such a nice homage. Yes, it is such a nice homage to Transformers the movie. And then Chapter 3 is going to be Kingdom, and so Kingdom
Beast Wars
is bringing in Beast Wars to the War for Cybertron trilogy, revisiting a part of the Transformers properties that hasn't been touched in a long time. And that has me so freaking excited to see how that's going to be weaved into it. Mark, I know, is that sort of one of your primary integrations into Transformers? Like, did you ever expect that to be coming for this? Because I didn't know that was coming. And
not in the slightest.
I'm stoked.
Not in the slightest. Just the fact that they tried touching Beast Wars in comic books and only came out with 2 4-issue miniseries since it ended, 15 years ago or something, just made me think that they were just kind of leaving it alone, especially playing with these original characters as they are. The fact that they're folding it back in, and that it's going to be the crescendo of this giant 3-part story of Transformers for this new audience is thoroughly exciting. I can't wait to see what they do. And I gotta have a Cheetor, gotta have a Rat Trap, gotta have a Dinobot. I really hope they bring these guys back into the fold.
Yeah, no, I do too. Like, especially, yeah, gosh, I did not think that was where they would be going with this, but the fact that they are, and again, I alluded to the beautiful animation, the Beast Wars characters are going to look great in this animation style. Maybe John read a Dinobot line, I don't know. But I think that this series just has me thoroughly excited for where they're going to go. And, some people cite the sort of the Alpha Trion, Alpha Trion protocols or whatever.
Protocols.
Is sort of like a red herring story. I think those are going to come back into play with Bumblebee later on. It may be somehow restored in some manner, shape, or form. Maybe he has knowledge about the Maximals and the Predacons or something like that. I don't know. But it all remains to be seen. But I'm very excited to see chapters 2 and 3 as we go here. So do yourself a favor. If you haven't watched Transformers War for Cybertron Trilogy Siege, watch it and then get in on the conversation with us here. And I love talking the robots in disguise with y'all. But before we go tonight, John, you have a little bit of a fan interaction that we wanted to maybe get to here as we close out the program.
Are you talking about the email?
Yes.
Okay, let me pull it up.
Yeah.
Because
where can they email us, John?
You can email us at hosts@bestdamnnerdshow.com, or we have a Dear Nerdy channel in the Discord, which is bestdamnnerdshow.com/Discord. So definitely hit us up there.
Absolutely.
So this is from someone after listening to the DC EU episode from last week.
Excellent.
So funny. Believe it or not, my favorite segment of this episode was John trolling the Firefly community. LOL. Could we get some more of that, please? And just so the brown coats out there don't brown their shorts with anger, I am a fan of Nathan Fillion and Firefly. But the reason I emailed is I'm finding that there's not enough feel-good OG sci-fi shows on TV anymore. Everything's too dark and serious. Are you guys feeling any fatigue, or is it just me? I'm really enjoying the Orville. I hope we can get a few more shows that head back in that direction. I would love another Star Trek, Stargate, Kolchak, or even an X-Files reboot series that have more hopeful Monster of the Week entertainment. What do you guys think? Am I getting too old, or do you agree? Thanks for the great show and all the joy you spread on a weekly basis. John, keep up the Lord's work. Your friend Andy.
Well,
look, the trolling, I promise you this, as long as we are doing this, the trolling will not stop. So
John got his
word.
master's degree in trolling, so he will not stop doing that. In terms
of OG sci-fi shows,
OG sci-fi or hopeful, this Transformer series we were talking about, definitely dark and gritty, so it might not be your fare.
Yeah.
But Mark, what say you to that?
So there is one. It's from the Arrowverse. If we're talking DC properties, most of those shows actually are very much formulaic Monster of the Weeks in a fashion. But the DC Legends of Tomorrow reminds me of these old school sci-fi shows because it is a ragtag group of all different conflicting personalities that are traveling through time week after week, facing some big baddie in 1960s, 1800s, things like that, come across different historical characters. So it's like Sliders with DC superhero comic book characters. So it's very fun hijinks in that fashion. There is story that arcs episode to episode linking together, but it's very much like, oh, this time we're doing Old West hijinks and run back to the spaceship. You know what I mean? Or, going into like the 60s and meeting Janis Joplin and things like that. So it might be worth a kick to check that out. It's very much in the vein of those kind of like 90s, early 2000s sci-fi shows.
I would recommend to him. I would recommend to him firing up Firefly if he hasn't watched it recently.
Oh my god!
And enjoying it because I enjoy Firefly quite a bit.
It's not available on any streaming platform.
And it sounds like that's right up his alley. But no, I do get it that there is. I think sci-fi in general could stand for another sort of moment, as it were. But John, what do you recommend?
There's some gems on Netflix though. But I would say, like, if you want something lighthearted, Space Force is fun. Although it's not sci-fi, it's still about spacey things.
Oh yeah, I actually haven't.
Funny at times.
I've seen a couple episodes of that. It was pretty funny. The 2 episodes I've seen, I've not picked it back up again.
There's some gems on Netflix. Altered Carbon. Have you guys watched that?
I have not, but I've heard
it's a dark
phenomenal.
show. Definitely not lighthearted.
It's dark.
Yeah.
It's a great sci-fi show.
I don't have any lighthearted recommendations for you, but that is a great sci-fi show. They have 2 seasons on Netflix. It's amazing show. And then Travelers. Have you watched that one, Mark?
Mm-mm.
Travelers is a really, really good show. It's it takes place in like modern day, but people in the future are living in this dying world, and they are trying to come back in time and kind of like right the wrongs of history so that their world is improved in the future. And what they do is, like, when they like map the point in history that someone dies, and they like inject their consciousness into that person's body. So the travelers are the agents who are now in the modern day trying to like, and every episode there's like a new like mission that they have to go on because they form up these little squads. But then because they're changing the future, there's like different factions that are rising in the future. They start coming back in time. So now you have like modern day with like future consciousness in these bodies that are like at war with each other. It's a really, really good show.
Dude, I'm gonna check that out.
Pretty
Absolutely.
wild.
It's really cool. Yeah.
There's some other shows that have passed, just in case like people missed them. Falling Skies with Noah Wyle. That was I believe it was on Sci-Fi back in the day. It's ended. I think it went 4 seasons, something like that. Continued in a comic for a bit, but that was really good. Where I mean, it was definitely serious, but it had more of like a BSG feel to it. It was serious, but it had a kind of lighthearted cadence to it. And maybe like each episode might end up with a moral or something going on in the situation in that regard. But Falling Skies was fantastic, where basically there's just this alien invasion that came to Earth, and it's the human resistance fighting back against these bugs. Really fun. Some of the character development they did in there, some of the action sequences they did, the alien monsters were pretty cool. Sometimes a little too CGI and hordes, but Falling Skies was a phenomenal show, as well as again a little bit darker, but Colony.
Every sci-fi show is dark, so it kind of reinforces what
nowadays
this saying.
Yeah,
but,
like that's where you see Falling Skies, and there's lots of like heart. Falling Skies has a lot of heart to it, and that light-hearted.
Dude, I say you just go back and watch Battlestar again. Like, forget it. You don't need anything but Battlestar in your life.
Well, if he is looking for lighthearted, again, not trolling, Firefly has a lot of that in there, and it is a very fun show.
You know,
Nathan not calling me back anymore, so Thanks for that. This has been a lot of fun talking Transformers with y'all. I hope it's come across how excited we all were. Me in particular. I mean, I almost almost got emotional right in the early going talking Transformers as Mark was recounting things that we used to do when we were younger. But it is such a very, very fun property, and I'm sure we will talk Transformers again at some point here in the Best Damn Nerd Show, but I'm glad we got to give it its due tonight. That is going to do it for this edition of the Best Damn Nerd Show. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, if you're a nerd, always say it loud and say it proud. Roll out. Hey, Nerdosphere, Bimbo Jimbo here. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Best Damn Nerd Show. I hope you enjoyed. And if you want early access to this show and others across the 10O Media Network, then you need to go to bestdamnnerdshow.com/Patreon and subscribe right now. There is a bevy of content out there for you, and I hope you enjoy it all. Thank you so much for your support.